Hello and welcome back. We're going to start talking about some German politics, which is going to be very interesting because they have a completely different system from what we have in America. So
Yeah.
it's going to be really cool. Um, do you want to introduce yourself in case they didn't see the other stream?
Uh, I'm Dominik. In case you know this, I'm an ENTP. This is also a channel about MBTI. And yeah, we already talked about diagnoses and whether or not you should get one or not. So that's the old stream, and this stream will be about, politics. Should I just start?
Yeah, why not? Let's go ahead and dive in.
So, right, we ended on you explaining how in America there are that's why I got the idea that we could do this. Is we talked about counties and certain regions where people can vote, and we in Germany we have the same thing. We have let me Google the exact number. We have certain districts in a way. So and in these we actually it's not, and the thing is this works in a different way because we don't make just one vote. We have two votes, and those are, and wait, let me see if I can find the number while talking. No, I can't. Those right, that we in those certain districts, we vote for 299. We vote for the district specific candidate. So in your district there will be a regional vote that votes one person in the Bundestag. But also that's not the only vote. You also vote for a party, and that vote together gives you this percentage thing where it will then be evaluated, and according to how many percent you got, you will get pre-selected people in the Bundestag again. But those are in a list that the party before the election starts makes. So they, for example, if you're in a party and you have certain people that you definitely want to get in there, those are the top, I don't know, on the top. And if you don't really meet that's basically just a ranking of which you want it to be in there the most and which the least. So let's say in the CDU, which Angela Merkel is part of, you want to get in there, then you can put her on let's say the top, and if you get in there, it's almost guaranteed that she will be in the Bundestag. And so that way you guarantee that you vote for a party, but you also have specific people that might be of certain interest, even though it's not necessarily that you like the party of the person that's in there. You just know that this is a really good politician, and because of that you vote for him, even though he might be in a party that you don't like or whatever. And that way,
Okay, I'm a little confused. So you said that there's two votes. You have the vote for the person and then a vote for a party.
Yes.
I'm not sure I understand it. Let me tell you what I've gotten, and then you can correct me and add to. So the first one, you're just voting on people's names and choosing the person that you most want for your district to go.
It's only in that district. It's 299 people, and you're in a district of out of 299 districts, and you vote for one person out of your district, and in other districts, there are other people that you can vote for.
Okay, so is it kind of like a Senate, like you have like a representative from your particular, or like a governor or something, like someone from your particular district
Region.
that has to be from your district or region?
Yes. Let's say, for example, that well, I don't know. There. Wait a minute. So, like, maybe in my district, there's someone that that isn't really like. No, I don't like that person. The thing is, like, as a politician, not personally, but like as a politician, it's just a bad politician in my opinion, right? But the problem is that person is representing the party that I like. Then I can just say, okay, wait, no, I don't want that person to be in the well, Bundestag. It's so I just elect someone that's really, like, in my opinion, competent. The problem might be that there is no one I think is competent in my district, which is kind of bad. I don't know if I answered anything here.
So, okay, so are they both voting for the Bundestag? Like, are both votes for the Bundestag?
Yes. Okay. Like, that's basically the political organ that where stuff is voted for. It's basically because we have a representative democracy. We vote for representatives into the Bundestag, and they will. Oh my God! Oh no! Wait, did I actually forget this? But well, I know there's a graph. Sorry. Let me look this up. But like the Bundestag is basically a political organ for deciding, I think, certain things.
Right.
I'll look up what it actually is.
Well, it's basically like your government, right? Like,
yes.
Like the country government.
It's like we have the three. It's called Gewaltenteilung. It's like three different three. Wait, maybe there's an actual translation for this. It's like three kinds of, like, the executive, the legislative, and the judicative.
Okay, yeah, we have the same. The branches. We call them branches.
Yeah, the branch. Yeah, yeah. We call them Gewaltenteilung, like Gewalt, which actually Gewalt is like violence, like, which is kind of interesting that they say that. Yeah, well, it's old, right? So language changes.
Yeah.
Right. They have this graph here. Oh, right. It's it's the legislative, which basically elects the whole system too. Like, it's but it also holy shit. Yeah, it's kind of complicated, but I actually had this in school, so it's bad that I forgot this. But it makes decisions about who to make, for example, the chancellor. And yeah, it's legislative. So it's basically organizing the stuff there.
Okay, question: are the people in the legislative, like the Bundestag, are they the ones who choose your chancellor, or do you guys get to vote for the chancellor?
We can't vote for them, no. Which is actually quite, it's like weird, like, especially the president. Like, especially that one, because, like, well, that guy is supposed to, I have an in a logical argument, like I like that a lot, but president is like the guy that represents you, right?
Right.
It's where you have them. So if you don't directly, well, elect them, then well, it's not really what the name suggests. So that's maybe like a problem, but yeah, it's not that much of a big deal, I think, because the president doesn't have that much of he's not that important as in America, I think.
Right.
Here he's basically the guy that just says, well, I think he's just the guy that signs everything.
Unlike our president, who could say no to any law that passes over his desk and could basically make any executive order, essentially making him just about as powerful as a king, except he has this legislative branch that can also stop him if they all can agree on something.
Yeah, well, here it is like 3 times. If he says no 3 times, he actually has to sign it, because well, if he just says no all the time, that's just not good, because it makes everything freeze. But he can say no 3 times, and after every no, they have to propose something new and go through a new process of making a new law. And the last time he actually, like, not after the 3rd time, when they went through this process of 3rd or 4th, the 4th time, he has to say yes. I think it was kind of like that. Because like there was so much that happened with this kind of law. Well, it's so refined, like he has to sign it back then. Like it's just there's no, like there's so many people involved that like one person's stopping all of that, just like reevaluation, all that bullshit that has to happen for that. And well, it's not bullshit. It's like really, really good actually, because like it's nearly like it's really refined, and he just come on, like that can't be something bad, right? It's nearly impossible. So that law says he has to do that then. That rarely happens, that actually a president doesn't sign something. Really, that's quite rare, I think.
So you actually have somebody that is considered a president separate from the chancellor, or are you saying that like it's separate?
It's separate. We have a chancellor and we have a president.
What's the difference?
Wait, let me just. There will be one word that's like in almost everything political in Germany, and I need to know that first. Wait, what? No, that can't be true. That's a weird translation. Wait a sec. Let me. It's like a prefix, and it translated to Germany, which doesn't make any sense at all. Let me use a dictionary. Probably something like federal. I don't know. Yeah, it's probably like federal, right? That means that the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a federal president, a federal chancellor. It's like, yeah. Right. Let me.
So. The chancellor. What's the difference between like their job duties?
So the chancellor elects the cabinet, like of the people that. Well, first off, he's in the executive, just like the president. The chancellor is in the executive branch, and he elects the cabinet. But I think, then the president has to sign that. The cabinet, the federal cabinet of like the whole ministers, you know.
Ministry.
So right, and then they do their so that they can be executive, and but he also like well is almost like well, because of that, because it's basically the head of the whole executive branch in a way.
The chancellor?
At least, yeah, it's like in the sense of the cabinet, which actually does a lot. Like for example, you have the minister that goes into different countries. How's that called?
Oh, I know that.
Like, we don't have that.
What is that called? Not a representative.
Oh wait.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Let me see. The foreign minister.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that one, for example, you know, or the minister of like I don't know, education, like all these positions, which are quite important actually. The chancellor elects those, or like, well, not really elects, but like
chooses.
Say, like, you know, chooses. Yeah. So right. Then well, that's actually kind of like everything he does, but like that's quite a lot. Like that's, you know, but you also have the yeah.
So yeah. The president. What does the president do?
The president, as I said, just signs everything formal, like makes it real, official, basically. So, that's everything that he does.
So he's basically it's almost, just like the.
Basically, he's the king, but really not really.
So he's like the one who gets to say the final, like, yes, no.
Yes, that's everything. More not. That's not more. It's the only thing he does, which is why. Well, it might sound like a lot, but like for us in Germany, that's like not really much.
Right.
So we don't really care about. Well, that sounds mean, but like you don't. It's like not really of big importance.
Well, and I think that like for us in other countries, the only person that we ever really see coming from your country is the chancellor.
Yeah, exactly.
When there's like the big United Nations meetings and stuff like that, then the chancellor's the one speaking on behalf of your country. So it's like, I didn't even know you guys had a president, to be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of like forgotten. Which I agree. Right, it's quite, it's not that easy for me because there's been very little moments where I could actually apply this knowledge that I got in school, so I forgot most of it. So, but where it was like the actual lawmaking, the chancellor doesn't really. Like, he's in the executive branch, so that's not really much part of it. But what's part of, like, when you have a minister that, you know, like, is basically the head of one specific topic in the country, and then you have a head of that, then that's the chair.
Oh, your sound went out again. There we go. There you go.
Yeah. So where did I cut off?
You said that. So you said that you have like the ministers of like education, medical, or whatever, and then you have the person on top of that who's the chancellor, and that's where it cut off.
That's why she's important, like Angela Merkel. But like this is the weird thing. We don't really even know, like, a lot of people don't really know what's going on actually. So right, the Bundestag and the Bundesrat are the ones that do the lawmaking. So you have the government part, which is at the moment the Union and the SPD. And you have the opposition, which is everything else. So and they can both, I think, propose like laws and stuff like that. The problem is just that the opposition doesn't really have. It's not that easy for them to get something passed or like through, because now they actually have to convince the other ones, and they themselves are kind of split. While well, that's only when you have a coalition out of two parties, which which is why I say that they're really good for times where you need to get stuff done, and really bad for times where if you don't need to get stuff done.
Right.
So they can more easily say no to things, because you need what do you say, majority in the Bundestag. While also you need to and the Bundesrat is more about actually looking at, okay, well, is this like it's like okay, do this, like it's basically saying like, okay, you need to do this or whatever, or and they actually have the power of because they're kind of like, you could say like senator, like, wait, what's the senate like?
Yeah, we have like a Senate and a Congress.
They might actually be almost like the same thing. It's basically the people that like they're like kind of like how do you say, like an advisor, like as in they say, okay, well, you might look into this, or but they also have power of, if they don't agree, then something, well, they can block it to, let me say, I want to see the graph again of making an actual law. Oops. Okay, that's not. No, that's. Oh, is there? Why is it always the same graph? That's kind of weird. But they actually, but they were actually the ones that are like the ones that, like, how do you say? Well, they don't have much actual elects, like real power, but they're the ones that look over it and decide, like, as in like this instance of God, how do you just? It's not that hard to describe. This is so, and it's just annoying me, but it's they're made to propose things, or like they don't really have that much power, but they're like, they have a voice in that sense. And in worst case, I think they can actually do something, but they're not supposed to do something. They're more but they're supposed to make people do certain things, or like to look into certain things and stuff like that, and to advise them, basically, to kind of like guide it in a way. That's, yeah, okay, I think that's a good word, to kind of like guide it.
That actually sounds pretty similar to like the American version. So we have like the House of Representatives that's like getting reelected really regularly, but they're like the representation of the people, right? So they're the ones like bringing up these like ideas specifically, I believe over money, usually like anything that has to deal with like revenue and whatnot starts with the House of Representatives. And they usually think about like short term, and they're the ones like giving ideas to the Senate, and the Senate are the ones who like review and then approve the different proposals that come through from the House of Representatives. So like the Senate are like above the House of Representatives for us, that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So, yes. Okay. I hope I didn't like out too much, but yeah. Sorry. Right, and you also have you also have how do you say, like so you have this federal kind of area, which is the Bundestag and the Bundesrat too, but you also have right, you also have another legislative thing instead, like next to the law itself, which is the how do you say, like the we have 16 different is it states? Yeah, I think it's actually states. Like we have, for example, I'm in North Rhine-Westphalia, which is, for example, Cologne is in this one. It's like the like it's the part it's the most western thing, kind of. It's like middle of Germany, but like on the west, if you imagine Germany on a map.
Mm-hmm.
And we have 16 different we have 16 of those, well, states. I'll just call them states. So funnily enough, we also have like 3 which are just a city, which is cool in a way. It's weird. For example, Berlin. Right. So and we also have them as a like, it's called Landtag, which is the same as like maybe the Bundestag, but it's just out of the it's directly consisting of the state the state government in a way, not the federal one. So as in you get, I think, depending on how many people you have in your state, like population wise, you get a certain amount of people elected into that. And as soon as the federal level tries to make a law or whatever, like the Bundestag, then, and as soon as it affects a state, they get activated. Like you also have to listen to them. So that you don't make something that you don't make a law that's not, well, that's just unfair for certain states where they disagree or whatever, right? So right. And there we actually have the problem of, for example, in I don't know the translation or whatever, but in Bremen we have Bremer. What? We have I don't know. It's like very little people. So by the standards of how many people you can elect into the Landtag, you would get a lot of, like, not many people in there, like not enough at all. While we also have, because yeah, right. So to counteract that, so that you have enough representatives of that, there's certain a percentage of, like, no, there's a minimum of how little you can have, but there's also an upper restriction, I think.
Right.
So
Weren't you saying that, like, for your, I think we talked about this at one point, and didn't you say, like, for your state specifically, you had an issue with, like, a state next door to yours where they had, like, way too, like, proportionately representative to people, they had way more than you guys did, and therefore, like, more say per people in your state than in the state next to yours?
yes, well, there's a very small there's a very small there's a very small state. Exactly. Well, it's not really a problem. It sounds quite harsh. No, I mean, like, I mean that there are, like, I don't know how many people it got. I have to look up so many numbers. Wait a minute. That's I actually forgot the name now. Wow. It's right. No, I got this. Okay. Right. In that state, there are less than 1 million people, while the biggest biggest city actually is also, like, it's like, wait a minute. It's sorry, yes, Saarbrücken only has 180,000 people in it, which is comparatively quite low if you compare it to North Rhine-Westphalia, which has 15 times the amount of, well, if the Saarland, which is the small state, has, like, not even 1 million, like, it's very it almost has 1 million, but it's like 900,000 something, and North Rhine-Westphalia has at least 10 times of that, like,
Right.
sorry, I just want to do, yeah, it's 70, it's almost 80 million. 18, holy shit, not 80.
The
18.
whole country lives in Westphalia.
It's almost it's almost 18, 18, and it's so wait, I don't know the number at the moment, so I have to Google a lot, and this is,
You
like,
don't
a lot
need
of
to have
multitasking.
all the numbers. It's fine. Like,
Yeah, okay, but, like, we have a maximum of people of our state that can go into the Landtag. The same for example, Saarland or Bremen, which is the opposite. They have a minimum. So we actually have, like, they have way more power comparatively than, like, per person than we in North Rhine-Westphalia have, meaning that it can be, it's not as severe as you have the problem, but it's kind of like the same problem that you said you have in America, when, with per district, that you have certain people that elect something, right? You have the same kind of problem there, but it's not as severe. Not
right.
at all.
Yeah, well,
Right,
we just have the ability to move around those lines and affect it in that way. But we have a similar problem, though, too, if you just even look at, like, our electoral vote per state. Like, we have some states, like California, have 55, and I think I don't know if we have a maximum, though, But we do have like hugely disproportionate where like some states have a whole lot of electoral votes and some states have like almost none.
Oh, maybe I should make this disclaimer. Like they don't have the same role as like they do in like the electoral like the electors in your country. But it's the same kind of problem. How the interesting thing is it's actually the opposite here, because it's so unlikely that we'll ever be able, like, I think it's so likely that we'll ever be able to, well, not ever, but like that we will move the borders of states or anything like that. So we have basically while you have it way too loose, we have it way too restricted in that sense, I think. Because we need the whole state to vote yes to change it. And like, just think about it. That's so unlikely, because it's not just that people might hold grudges or like think they're different, like especially Bavaria. Holy shit! That you know that they'll not unite or that they won't unite with a different state. It's not just that, but also like politicians actually have very much like they have an incentive to work against that, because, well, the less states you have, well, certain governments have to go poof. Like if you're a politician for, let's say, in a state that's supposed, or like where the election is about like uniting with a different state, then you as a politician in that state might risk losing your position because one of those state governments has to go to make one. Right? So actually, like, politicians have an incentive to stop that. Now, further splitting our states isn't really a good idea. It's not really used. Like, that would actually make it more problematic. Like that. It's just, why should you even? And it would be, like you would have to change so much, so that there's not even incentive at all to do it. The incentive for uniting certain states is that, for example, if the Saarland doesn't even have 1 million people in it, the chance that they are really like prosper, that it's not, they are just so much, like they're way behind in that sense. It's not enough. It's just not enough people, and it's just way too small to have as a state. So that's why you would maybe say that, okay, well, let's just add it to a different state. So yeah, but, well, I mean, people, like, I don't think that people would do that, really, for like the people in the state, which makes it quite hard, which you will have the opposite of, like, you have the opposite problem in America then.
Well, I mean, we definitely, like, we have states, and those state lines don't really change. I don't think any state is ever going to want to split up into multiple states, nor are they ever going to want to, like, join another state. But we also don't have any state that has so few people. I'm going to look up states by population. I think probably our least populated state is probably like Alaska. I know California has a lot of people because they have a lot of really big cities there. Let's see. Okay. So California has like 40 million people. Whew. Holy free holy. And then our least oh wow. Our least populated state is Wyoming, which has 500,000 people.
Wait, what? Which state?
Wyoming, which is this desolate state in the West. Like, north of the Rocky Mountain range is this desolate state called Wyoming, which I can believe that it has one of the smallest populations. And then Vermont is also really small, but Vermont is also small on like a physical plane. Like it's just a small state, like size-wise. And then Alaska. Yeah, but we actually have a pretty big difference because, I mean, 500,000 to 40 million. That's how big the state size differences are. But that's just population.
We could make a percentage out of that to scale it to compared to Germany. I actually said something wrong.
Oh no!
It's not the Landtag. It's Landrat. That has to decide whenever there's something made about the state. The state. But yeah, Landtag is actually a smaller kind of government for this specific state, which you also elect, which you also have to elect yourself, but a different. It's a different legislative period, like.
Right. Right. Well, we have like state governors and like state legislation as well, and then and then you have like city mayors, but I don't know. I don't really know American politics all that well. Like I'm really feeling the limits of my knowledge.
Yeah, I understand.
Actually, I'm surprised by some of these states that are like the biggest states. We have like some states that I would think are really small, like Ohio has like 11 million people. And then well, actually, I'm not surprised by all these smaller states. Never mind. Our smallest states make a lot of sense because they're in like the most cold and desolate parts of America. Well, cold in the winter, hot in the summer, that kind of stuff.
Okay. It's just we're talking about this because I feel like I'm saying so little because I don't like. I know like the same thing. I don't know that much about politics.
Well.
And I talked a lot minute-wise, but I don't think there was much content in there. Okay, well, yeah, wait, there's more. Right, so we have. Yeah, we also have. I think you have that too. We have. God, how do you like a I think it's constitution actually, like something like basically the same thing, where the law, like the baseline law is that whenever there is a law that should pass, there's also you also need to look at that, which is judicative, I think. Right? Yes.
So
yeah, it's.
Oh, go ahead.
It's called Verfassungsrecht, as in federal, and you also have a state one.
I think we have something similar to that. And I actually just had a question pop up in my mind, not in the chat actually, but I know it's kind of sounded like that for a second. I have a question. So like with World War II, like, did you guys not have a government for a short period of time after World War II? Or, like, how did you guys end up becoming a social democracy?
Okay, so we have that right after World War II. God, like, I don't think I actually directly had that, but it must have. I think it was like. I don't know really, but I know that we talked like there was a lot of like no, I don't know the answer to that. Like maybe I can like research that one. It's like the so we're a social democracy. Like, okay, no, can you say that again about the?
Oh, my question was like, when did you guys become a social democracy?
That was kind of after what happened. Like, there's always this small time where oh God, where you know, it's basically this short period of anarchy, I would say, like where you maybe that's, I don't know, maybe I have this from German teachers and I don't know anymore, but where you have one state and you want to go to another state, basically, or like another like government, maybe if we want to make this about politics, and you have this very small period where it's anarchy in a way, but then you, out of that, you can make something new. So oh wait, that's what it's called. And it was 1949 is when it on the 24th May at 000 is when it was like when it instantiated, like when it got, like when it initiated.
That's interesting. That's quite a long time, actually, after the end of the war. That's almost 4 years, which is kind of hard to imagine what it would be like living in Germany for that period of time. But I guess there was probably still a lot of like people from other countries still lingering around in Germany after the war, trying to like find, probably trying to find like like Nazis and stuff, like trying to search them out. But also you had a lot of like communism in there, and you had a lot of like the Soviets still like residing.
That was Eastern.
Yeah.
That was Eastern.
And then you had
when did the wall fall? Okay.
It was 1989.
Was it? Yeah, that sounds right. Wow.
I only remember because I was in school in 2009, and I was like the vice president of my high school German club. And we had like a party, like a 20-year anniversary. That's all. That's the only reason why I remember. Because it was 20 years while I was in high school in that year. So can't forget that. And it was in like November, I think.
9th November, which is funny because it's 9/11, but switched.
Right.
It's always kind of confusing for me because, like, wait a minute, that date sounds similar, but then I realized, no, wait, you switched the numbers, I think, right?
Dyslexia.
9/11. No, I don't have that, but it's just the differences between German and English.
Oh, that's right, because we put our dates backwards.
Yeah, and 9/11 is the 11th September, not the 9th November.
Yeah.
Because the 9th November is in Germany, it's the where the wall. The wall, you know what I mean. Where you reunited, basically. So
this guy put a strange comment in chat. I think he might have used Google Translate. Der kennt das Jahr vom Tag der Deutschen.
No, that's correct German. It's correct German. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm like not. Yeah, that actually is something that I don't know. I probably should be embarrassed by it. I don't know. It's like, how do you say that? It's Allgemeinwissen, as in. But I'm also like, like, come on, it's kind of like too, like, come on, man, come on, things like that. It's called general. No, what the fuck? Who translate? Holy shit, man. Yeah, it's doesn't know this stuff.
Yeah,
Common knowledge.
Yeah, it's like there's.
I don't know common knowledge.
Is it like? Really. Is it like a? Oh, he doesn't know the year of the day when Germany became one.
It's called immunity. Wait a minute. It's actually quite a big thing here. I think Day of German Unity. So yeah, I should be embarrassed.
Yeah, you should be. Shame. No.
Yeah, I'm not that good with common knowledge. Like,
that's really, okay. A lot of Americans wouldn't even be able to tell you what year that America became America, even though we have a basketball team that's called the 76ers, that's from Philadelphia, which is the city in which they signed the Constitution of the United States of America in 1776. Huh. Well, at least that's how I remember.
It's interesting because that Germany, like, that's almost 100 years later. It's almost 100 years later that we became a country here out of Prussia. It's 1870 or 1871.
Oh, wow. But wasn't Germany a country before Prussia as well? And then the Prussian Empire came in?
It was a bunch of little things. But like, officially as a country, not really, like, not in the sense that we are a country now. Like, there definitely were people here, but, like, for example, they didn't really speak the whole same thing. I think it was because of Martin Luther, like, and like Gutenberg, and then Martin Luther, who made a book. Like, no, they didn't make a book, but like Gutenberg made this revolution of writing something, and Martin Luther then used that to make the book, like the Bible, translated into German, and now people actually had some, like, well, it's not just that, but Martin Luther also was an activist for, like, how we need education in a way, so that people can read this thing that I made. And because of that, people actually had to speak the same language. And I think under France, like after the French Revolution, something like that, then out of that, the whole thing emerged where, okay, now people had to speak the same language. And they were like, well, we're similar, we speak the same thing. And now they could, now people in the before Prussia, German, had something that united them, so they could fight back, and then, like, stuff happened, and then something happened, like, then Bismarck, I think, came along and stuff like that, and then 1871, they he founded Germany as an official. Right, and actually the after that, which was like, I can actually explain. It's interesting that I still know this, how the First World War came out of this. because there was it's called Drei Kaiser, yeah, where there were three. What's that word? Like Kaiser,
Caesar,
Caesar, really?
right? Like Kaiser.
Emperor.
Yeah, like a czar,
Hmm?
a czar or a Caesar, like the
No,
head.
emperor. Like I would
Yeah.
say. There was a year where there were three emperors. Like, firstly, the old one stopped being an emperor, but the new one died of a disease. So the very, very young third emperor was now the emperor of Prussia,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't like Bismarck. So Bismarck resigned because he was kind of like bullied out of it, like harassed in a sense. So he just stopped. But the problem is that Bismarck had a very specific foreign policy, and he made like contracts, so well, everything worked well and stuff like that. But the new emperor didn't, while firstly firing Bismarck, he didn't make the new context. He didn't replenish, like, you know what I mean, like he didn't reinstantiate them. Well, because of the way he was, which was very abrasive and like not nice that necessarily, just kind of like Trump. um, so because of that, the relations to the other countries kind of like broke down in a way, and well, he also invested in, for example, the marine stuff like that, which the UK, or like the Britons didn't like that much, and also just below Germany, like in Austria, the whole situation with like the countries that are now like old Russia parts, basically, they were they were
The
under
countries that were just old Russian parts.
they oppressed them basically, and then
Right.
there was this time where I think someone in Austria got shot, and
Franz
Germany was,
Ferdinand.
yeah, right. So German, well, the Emperor of Prussia also still had power over Germany in a sense. So he he acted in a way that was like, hey, dude, I'll help you when you know, like when you do anything, I'm right behind you. You know, like he gave him a like a check, like as in money, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a sign to the Austrian or king, like I don't know really know, but like because of that, Austria was like, okay, I'm gonna start a war. Now the problem was that Russia still liked old Russia and was like, okay, if you need something, if you're like in war or whatever, we'll support you in your war. Now, Britain had the same relation to the UK, and the UK and France had the same relation to each other because the Emperor of Prussia didn't, well, reinstantiate the contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Now there was a chain reaction where Russia entered the war between, I think it's Yugoslavia, like Panslavia. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know.
The Slavic
Yeah,
areas.
Pan-Slavic countries. So because Austria was in war with Pan-Slavic countries, Russia entered. Because of that, Britain entered, then France entered, and now it was like, okay, well, we'll still, like, Germany was still on the side of Austria. That was the first war basically, and I think like it was only a world war because then I think America like
We
stepped in. That
we
made it,
joined our British brothers who we
yeah,
stopped
basically,
hating randomly.
right, exactly. This is just like
Oh, your sound went out again. But while you're working on your sound, I guess I'll just say, like, we were taught very similarly in school, like, at least in like America,
Mhm.
about how the World War I started. I didn't know all that about like the 3 year Kaiser and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But we were taught about like how there were all these alliances between different countries and how Germany
Mhm.
was the first to respond to Franz Ferdinand being shot. And then Russia came in to oppose, to like go with the opposite side. And then, France and UK, they joined. And then like all these people were getting involved, like on this poor like country of Austria, like just getting like all thrown around. And it
Mhm.
was just like a European war. But of course, America came in because we had money and resources. So, um,
Mhm.
specifically resources, because we were a giant country with not very many people. Um, so yeah. And what's sad is like we're a giant country still, but we don't have half the resources we used to have because we sold them all, and we still put ourselves majorly in debt. Um, but that World War, actually, from what I remember, was basically primarily charged to Germany because Germany was the first one to step in. So they ended up getting the brunt of the
Yes.
debt from World War I because of that.
Mhm.
And then
Good.
you guys hit like a major depression because of that. Like you guys had like no
Yes.
money, no resources. Your people were depressed. Like your
Yeah.
country was all messed up because you just had a war
Mhm.
there. And then like that depression obviously affected Hitler, and it was because of that depression,
It
because
is that. Yeah.
he used that. He did. He was like, okay, like we're going to take back our rights because we were screwed basically at the end of
Mhm.
the Paris Treaty or something. Like they were totally screwed.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and then, like, of course, Hitler was like, we're going to regain German strength. Like, Germany's not the worst country. Like, we didn't really do all that
Mhm.
bad in
It's
World
not
War
our
One.
fault.
Yeah,
Those people and those and those and those. That's their fault. Not we didn't do anything. It's their fault. We're
exactly.
perfect in that sense.
Exactly. And then,
Uh,
then Russia's all like taking the opposite side. They're like, "Yo, Germany, we'll help you take over all these other countries," because Russia just really had the ulterior motive of taking over the world, which is actually interesting. I don't know if you know this, but
please don't.
actually,
Yeah.
Stalin, the leader of Russia during World War II time, he's not actually Russian. He was from Georgia, which is a country near Turkey and near Yugoslavia and all those Slavic countries. It's
Mhm.
like and near Armenia. And anyway, he's actually from Georgia, and he moved to Russia so that he could like get his dreams of like taking over the world. And then there was also Mussolini, who had similar like let's take over the world like mentality, and they saw Hitler and was like, this is a guy. He's got
Yeah.
influence over the people, and he
I mean,
wants to take over the world.
I don't necessarily want to talk like really about those people. Those leaders, because maybe like I don't know that much about them really.
Hmm.
So like I don't know. Like I wouldn't actually. For example, I wouldn't necessarily paint Hitler as the sole perpetrator of the whole thing.
Mm-mm.
What and like I don't know. I think there are a lot of like different things in there. Like there's mainly a problem of wow, like like it was bullshit. Like I can certainly see the whole like this whole resentment and like this whole everything was shit.
Yeah.
And before that war, everything was okay, and like stuff like that, and just well, it was unfair. And this is so weird. This reminds me of I feel like I know this feeling. I know that feeling. It's like something similar. Like yeah, it's weird. I don't know. Maybe I'll talk about that. I don't know. Like, it's weird. I don't know. Should I? Like, it might take some more explaining.
Well, I think I kind of see kind of where you're going, and I'll use an example, and then you can see if like you want to like continue down that. But I feel like Germany
Yeah.
kind of was used as like a scapegoat for World War One, and it's actually something that people still do in like even. I can even see it in like my particular work situation, like when there's a problem, everyone is getting involved to fix the problem, right? But after the problem's resolved, then they're going to look for who is the sole blaming person for this problem? Who can we pin the blame on, so that only one person has to take responsibility for why everything went to shit, instead of like actually taking a deep look and seeing where the different responsibilities lie. And I definitely feel like Germany was the scapegoat of World War One, and they were just like charged for everything in a way that was definitely unfair.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I'm trying to get at is it's like a personal experience of mine, like something that happened in my life where I felt like that. It was and I actually touched on that earlier. It was when in like my 5th to about 7th grade, where I was just like in the 1st and 2nd grade, kind of like, yeah, well, I can definitely say I was bullied in the 5th to 7th one, probably in the 1st and 2nd grade too. But so yeah, the situation in the 5th, in my 5th to 7th grade was like, again, I didn't really realize kind of like behavior, like how that impacted something, or like I feel like I might have been misunderstood and didn't know that I'm like that there were boundaries that I was accidentally crossing because I get understand it differently, or something like that. It was like there were moments where for example, there was conflict and I reacted like in a bad way to it, and in a way that only furthered like conflict in a way. For example, something happened and I just told the teacher, even though it wasn't not much of a big thing there. It was just that I didn't expect the way they behaved. So I told a teacher, but I mean like that wasn't really. I just didn't know why they did it. But it wasn't really a bad thing, certainly, or necessarily. And what happened is that it didn't resolve. It didn't resolve. Like it wasn't a temporary thing in the sense. Like it didn't get resolved, and my opposition basically got friends or like people on their side, but I didn't. And after some time, it got more and more, and well, suddenly I was in a situation where, like, wow, those like there are a lot of people against me, more than I am, basically, not more than one, and that's not they are against me. So there was this perpetual feeling of wow, I'm they are against me. Like there's this mass of people that is against me, and that turned out to get it turned into bullying, and yeah, and there were times where it was just like I didn't. I didn't. It's hard to describe just like that, but it's most definitely the way I think the people felt there too, because I didn't think that I did something wrong, and there were all these people that well disliked me quite overtly, and made all these like reasons for why they don't, and they didn't really. Those weren't reasons for treating someone like that. Um, like they were just like scapegoat problems in a way. Like they're just distracting from the fact that I was mistreated and like right. So like I could describe certain situations. For example, they had this thing where they make this kind of sign with they cross their fingers and like put it to their arm and said like well, kind of like a vaccine. Because when I touch something or so I don't know, it becomes like I don't know dirty or whatever or like ill. So well they did that a lot, or it was I was like didn't really find a group when we had like group work, you know, and I was like very obviously or like overtly not like they mostly they just made it very clear that they didn't want to do something with me, which really like made me, I mean obviously that made me angry and stuff like that. So the way I reacted was not good. I had moments where I most of the time I just withdrew. For example, when we waited in front of the classroom, I just stood there and thought about stuff, or like, you know, just ignored everything around me, them, or, you know, just whatever. But there were times where everything that I was like trying to block or everything that I held in just got out quite like in a quite sudden and like very furious and like angry way. Like I was very out of control angry, and kind of like a bull that only saw red everywhere. And like I'm trying to find the word, like a tantrum, a really big tantrum, like, and it didn't really matter that I exactly attacked, like I really like attacked people, like I attacked people because of that. I sought to attack back and stuff like that, because, you know, I held everything in, which didn't really go that well. Right. And only made it more. And at times there were certain steps and certain points where well, I realized that, and other people realized how crazy that was for me, like how strong, and then luckily stopped. Because there was one time where in art, I was like focusing on my art thing, you know, like ignoring everyone that was around. Like there were certain people that just, you know, were normal students, but there were certain people that just, you know, wanted to annoy me and how do you say, provocation. Yeah, they wanted to provoke me. So I tried to ignore them, but they did. It's one person did it so often that like it was just terrible. Like it was just too much, and I was like, okay, wait, what do I do now? Like I know, I certainly know that when I do something or like that's not, you know, like for example, they threw away my pencil case and stuff like that, and just like you know, made everything and like my stuff, they just messed it up. They made a mess out of my stuff. So I was really like, I was furious, and I knew that, okay, when I do something, it will instantaneously turn into me being very obviously very angry, like holy shit, like I knew that. So what I did was like, okay, I don't really want to damage people long term. I took like scissors and just held them, and I knew that I was looking, like I knew that no way. Oh, I don't know if I like really knew it, but like I didn't think I would really like stab, but I looked like I would, and I knew that, and yeah, so I took that scissors and like went. I don't actually no wait a minute. I don't think I planned long term. Probably that. Yeah, that's what I mean. Okay, so I took the scissors and just went in the direction of that person, and like I was. I know that it was very scary the way it looked. So people came and pinned me down, and the person got the message definitely.
Right.
So it's just very hard for me to describe this because I don't. It's like I don't. I hope that I didn't really want to stab someone, and this is really. This sounds like. This sounds really bad. Okay, and like it definitely didn't like it made me still angry when people were against me, but I'm actually relieved that like people pinned me down because like that's good, and the person got the message, and after that the person stopped, which was a major relief because I finally was able to like just be have like peace when I wanted to do art and in school. But there were certain other times where, again, I was getting just really angry, right? Like, I was just constantly being provoked and stuff like that. So there were certain times where there was like one thing that triggered all of that, and like I just had a massive tantrum. It's really hard to describe how it felt. It really left an impact on me, and at one point in time, I swore to me that I will never ever like I just didn't want that, and I realized that just made it all worse. And when it got better, like the bullying like stopped when someone else actually got drawn into it, because I had two people that supported me during that time, and like one of the people I did group work with and stuff like that, right? They actually like they really helped me. So right, so when they got drawn into it, one of them told their parents, and after that the teacher realized and made it stop and stuff like that. So after that, it took a year, and after that I was socializing again, for example by playing League of Legends. So yeah, that's the time where it really like developed my character, I think. And it just really, I mean, like, it's not like I wasn't part of the whole problem, but like, it not to that extent, not that much. So I can understand the way the people back then might have felt, and it's not like especially if you have other people that support that kind of feeling, because it's God, like that's a massive amount of anger that like it's just so much, and I can understand that, and it's really powerful. And yeah, sorry, it's just I kind of lost what I wanted to say. I think there was something else. Oh, wait a minute. Like it's. When was that?
There's like an analogy in what you're saying, right? Between like what you've went through and what the German people went through after World War One is what you're getting at, right?
The feeling. I think it comes quite close to that. Yeah, it's very like. It's just I can't comprehend like how I felt back then. Like I was really like all the time these Spanish where they have like a red like flag or whatever, and
oh yeah, the matador
animal. Yeah, right. I felt like that, but like everyone like was red, like everyone was against me, like that kind of feeling, like that's just a very like strong thing, like the amount of like hatred there, like, and I think they definitely felt like that too, like everything was just against them, everything went against their way. They had no food, like they had no money at all, nothing was really there, and just because like the French wanted to have stricter restrictions and stuff like that, and they were mistreated, and no one really was safe, and they had to fear that they might starve, and all that bullshit, and like all this stuff, and you don't really look at the whole thing really objectively anymore. It's just like this bulk of emotion, and now there's this guy that says like, oh wow, those people are actually the reason for it. Now we have a target to attack, and everything will get better. And he well, it definitely didn't get like. I don't think it. I don't really remember history that much more anymore, but I think that it didn't. There definitely was improvement compared to directly after the World War II, the World War One. So I can understand how the people felt back then, and why all of it happened. And I think not on this more just normal level. I think I don't know. Like I feel like I understand their the way they felt there. Like that was probably like holy shit. Like yeah. I can understand how you could get there. Huh. I didn't have this analogy earlier on. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see exactly what you're talking about. Like basically like when when the people around you, it doesn't matter how many, but when people around you are constantly attacking you or hurting you and like making you feel bad for something that you've done, like for you, it was like you tattled on somebody and now suddenly they're making everyone hate you because of that one thing that you did, and they're like attacking you and taking it out on you. And like with the German people right after World War II, that was, like you were saying, specifically the French, but like Germany was being blamed for the entire World War One, which was completely incorrect. But at the time, like they were the scapegoat, and so they were getting basically the hate from the world, like saying like, "Wow, Germany, you like messed up, you like screwed up the world, like it's all your fault. Like now you're gonna be in debt." And like not only like that, but they're struggling, like they cannot seem to like keep their head above water, and like they're just feeling like on the defense all the time, and like eventually there's like this breaking point where they just like their feelings are so overwhelming that they want to lash out on somebody because it's hurting too much to leave it inside. And then this man comes by, and actually he came into power a couple years before the expansion even started. Like the Nazis came in power, and then they brought Hitler into the leadership position, but that was like a few years, and it was like the Nazis in general that actually helped build the society back up from that negative place, and was like, hey, we have a place for you to put your anger into. Like, look, these people are the cause for what was going wrong. Like, they're the reason that you're in this situation, and here's the solution. Not only did they give a reason, but they gave a solution to how to outlet that anger and how to make everything better. And at that point, when you're starving, when you're fearing for your life all the time, all you want is a solution for how things can be better. And when you're already that angry, it's really easy to want to use violence as a way to deal with it. And so, like, and like what you were like, Hitler gave them someone to hate, but he also gave them a lot of like uplifting stuff. Like he was very uplifting to them and was like, this country is going to be amazing, like we are amazing, like we're great, you guys are great. And he was giving them the kind of like encouragement that they needed to feel at that time, because they were feeling really down on themselves. And he came in and was like, you guys are great, here's how we're going to be even better, here's how we're going to get out of this situation, let's take over Poland where all the Jews are and start there.
But I don't think, well, I don't necessarily think it was that like happy or encouraging or like,
well, yeah,
but definitely driven by anger. I don't want to undermine that. That's that just it's just the thing that kind of like I was missing there.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm sorry I made it seem like happy, but I just mean like he was giving them encouragement. Like he was saying like, you can do it, like let's do this, like you have power, like these kind of things. Like maybe it wasn't like the best way to go about it, maybe it wasn't all like sunshine and daisies, but he was like giving them empowerment and making them feel better about themselves essentially.
Yeah, that's true. It's but wait, we got into this because you asked about the what happened like until the law, like the well, it's called Grundgesetz, like the basis of like the Germany today, and like why it's a social state, like country. I think that's what you asked about.
Yeah, like how did it become a social democracy from where it was during the Reich and during like the Nazi regime? Like how did it, like once the war ended, obviously the Nazis were no longer in power. And I know you still had the Russian influence in there as well, because there were already Russians in there, and especially like in Berlin, that was like where it was, you had like East Germany and West Germany. And then how did it go from, I guess were the Western countries still kind of like occupying Germany for a little while after the war?
They were. Until they thought, I think, well, it would make sense, Germany was able to sustain itself. It was just, God, like who, I just don't know. Like, I think there must have been like certain people who worked on that. I just don't know. Like, there are no names here. Like, let me see. Like, right. It's, I can prove this. But like that it's a social state. I think it's mostly predicated on the idea that if you want your people to you know, help your country and, you know, make everything good, then you're also interested in them being good and them being able to do that. So let's base this country in the thought that, okay, we'll help people so that they can help us and the collective, which is the whole idea, basically. I think the argument for being a social democracy.
Do you, well, maybe you can't answer this, but was it like influenced by Marxism to be socialist, or is that just like Marxism really only like influenced communism?
Well, he brought up the idea of how much power the working class has, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just peripherally by this knowledge being out there, and the motivation of, hey, like, we don't want this to happen anymore. This is the opposite of it. You know, like the first, I think, is it amendment? I don't know. Maybe it's probably comparable. Like the first thing that's in the in Grundgesetz is that the dignity. Well, let me just say it in German. Die Würde des Menschen ist unantastbar, roughly translating to the dignity of the human is untouchable. Like, that's probably the most literal translation of it. Still works. Like, meaning that, for example, all the bullshit that they did to Jews and whoever they didn't like in Nazi Germany, almost everything was directly attacking the dignity of them, which is the first line that is in there, that's not, you can't do that, it's untouchable. So yeah, that what was your question again? I'm sorry.
No, I was just asking about like the influence of Marxism, but it sounds like really it was more just like, here's what happened and how it happened. Let's do the opposite because we don't want to do anything like that again.
Yeah, that's at least what I think it must have been. I don't know. It's not something I really know. It's just my explanation.
Right.
But I definitely think I could research that and find it out, or like, I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, that's not really something that I guess we really have to research because it's probably more in depth than we'd even be able to find, like skimming over while we're talking and trying to keep the conversation. But
I shouldn't do that. I'm sorry. Okay, let's stop.
No, it's okay. I get it though. Like, you're like, I need to know this answer. Let me check. I definitely can be quite the same. We actually have some interesting comments in the chat. I don't know if you have the chat open.
I can see.
So okay. One of the questions was like, do good and evil vanish? Do good and evil will vanish over long, long times, but really, who cares about being good or doing good nowadays? Who looks at the good and evil and compares it? Who figures out the different points and advocates for the better ones? And then the other guy said, good and evil won't vanish. It's deep core in humans. We're not robots. And if you mean do good, this does not mean others will do the same, but maybe they will not, and maybe they'll do the opposite. I would respond that good and evil is an interpretation of an action that humans are taking. So good and evil only exists so long as people will like create that categorization. In some situations to do something evil, in another situation could be good. And so like good and evil are relative to the situation.
Oh, holy shit. Good and evil, that's such a massive question.
I know.
Is there, like, oh my god, sorry, I forgot this. Was there a certain core question?
I think it was more of just like it seems more of like a rhetorical thing, like who really cares about doing good or being good nowadays?
I think there are a lot of people. Wait, who said that? Like, can you...
Walter, it's like halfway up the chat. Or not halfway. Like when it's a little bit before Jason came in.
A little bit before. But who really cares about... Oh, right.
There you are.
Right. Well, I think, I mean, who wants to do evil stuff? Who wants to be an evil person? Like, good, and especially when you compare it to good, because good is like the word that, you know, if you like something and something, you know, you eat something and I'm almost saying it's good, well, then it's good, you know, like, it's positive, and bad is negative. So obviously there's already association with something you want, meaning that I don't think that people don't want to be good, but I think that, well, maybe they would have like this whole thing is about interpretation.
Hmm.
But I don't think, for example, I don't think that Hitler, like people who want to do bad stuff, those are probably those who, well, those probably have something like antisocial personality disorder or something like that. But I don't think that with certain, like some people who did bad stuff, probably they thought that what they did was good, because either because this is about like being able to interpret that. So yeah, the only people who I think do bad stuff would be those people who are intentionally doing bad stuff, which I would call evil. I would only call those people evil who want to intentionally be bad. Yes.
Yeah.
So like.
Oh, go ahead.
So like. But it's not really like. It's, you really have to think about this beforehand, because like I think people don't like what one should probably do is to think about what they do, and if they want to do good stuff, to really think about, okay, am I really doing something good here? Am I really, and if you do that, then I think then I think you can do good stuff. Yeah, I think you can be a good person. Okay, good. I think that's kind of like how I would say or answer. It's a very difficult thing.
It really is, and I think like oftentimes the people who are doing really quote unquote evil things are people who are trying to do something good. They just think that these negative consequences outweigh the good that will come from it. And I think Hitler was thinking that he was doing good. Like I think like his intention was to like make the world a better place, and he thought in order to do that he had to get rid of the bad people, which he had, you know, associated with not only Jews, but like gays and other people. And I don't think his intention was to hurt a bunch of people. His intention was, okay, the loss of these people, these bad people, is far outweighed by the good that will come from it without them. And now, yes, it's corrupt. And now, yes, we don't agree with that. But I think that was his intention.
I think I would have to disagree in a way. Like, for him, good was probably like not betterment of the world, more like for him the world was Germany. For him, like everything that's labeled Germany is good. Maybe then you could say, yeah, he wants to better the world in. Yeah, okay, well, yeah, okay, then I agree.
Okay,
but like,
well then better Germany.
He also thought that, for example, Jews were evil, so if he eradicates them, well, then the evil goes away, so everything's good. But wait, oh no, there's something important that I just forgot in this moment. Shit. Wait a minute. It's also like everything, like not everything, but everyone cheered him on. Like he only received good response, like response as in, oh shit, like we love you and stuff like that. You know, like they, you know, he was really liked. Like there was a lot of positive response to what he said. So the reaction to that usually is, well, okay, yeah, I'll just go on and do more and try to see actually what happens if I do more than just that, and like if it's always more good responses, then it just escalates into like off the charts. So I think he thought at the start he might have been like, okay, yeah, I'll do good stuff, but he didn't update. He probably didn't really update that policy anymore in his brain, and it just went out of control in general too. It's just, yeah. Well, sorry, I just interrupted you there because like maybe this is a German thing, but like as soon as you hear something like Hitler probably wanted to good for the world, and I actually think I said that myself too, but the immediate response is just, well, no, wait, let's first think about what you said. We don't want this to be wrong. But that's probably just a German reflex, I don't know, because, you know, everyone's kind of sensitive here about this, I think. Not everyone, but a lot of people.
Right. And I think you have every right to be, honestly, as a country, especially like when he's pretty much the first association nowadays that most people have to your country. So you want to make sure that people have the correct understanding of him and don't want any misinterpretation there. So it makes a lot of sense that even just in general, that would be like, one, a tough subject, and two, just something that you'd want to be very clear about. But I do want to let you know that I did hear that your mic cut off, so you're going to have to fix your mic again. Right. And honestly, like what I have been thinking about this whole time is like I'm writing a novel, you guys, and my main antagonist uh, is somebody who really thinks that he's doing something that's going to make the world better. And what he thinks, and he's thought about it a lot. This guy, the main character, is quite old. He's like well over 100 years old. And he thinks that what he's doing is benefiting the world and making the world a better place. And the main character obviously doesn't agree. Though she does at first, she's initially convinced anyway. I just kind of like see that connection. So I might have overspoke because I might have also been connecting Hitler to my character and kind of taking the analogy a little too far. Because I was thinking about both at the same time and trying to talk about not my character. So I could have just blown it a little bit out of proportion.
Yeah. Can you hear? Yeah, okay, good.
I can hear you.
Yeah, something I just, now that you said that, I thought that, I forgot that I thought this, but now I think this again. What, like, that I'm kind of actually, now in this moment, I'm actually kind of like a representative of Germany, so yeah, it just reminded me of that you said that, like, that I want this to be right information. And this, I mean, like, this is my opinion. So, and it's probably not enough to say that I just don't want this, if anyone sees this or whatever, I just don't want this to be misconstrued as something like I support those kinds of ideas, which I don't. It's just some thoughts about this,
Right.
I think.
Well, I think when anyone talks to an ENFP and an ENTP, you just have to assume that we don't believe or agree with the ideas that we're talking about. We're probably just bringing up ideas.
Well, it's more like we focus, we highlight one thing while not like there might be something to it. It's not really the whole thing. And some things, yeah, well, actually, this is the thing that I think more than just in this point of time. But there definitely is ENPs, yeah, they have, you need to get like an extra category of things people can say, which are, well, something that they just had the idea and just throw it out there and they not really thinking about that more. Like it's just like, whoa, this is an interesting idea, man. You know. But this wasn't just like an impulsive thought or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's. I mean, yeah. Sadly, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's honestly what gets a lot of ENPs in trouble, is because we do this so often. Like we just have an idea and say it because it's interesting to think about before we think about if that actually is something we want to say out loud, because whatever you say, people are going to interpret it as your opinion, whether or not what you're saying is actually your opinion or just an idea. It's the unfortunate side effect of being an extroverted, intuition dominant human being.
Yeah.
And I'm 10 years older than him, and I struggle with, well, not quite 10, but almost, and I struggle with this all the time. So I just think it's something that doesn't really go away that much when you have like extroverted intuition all the time. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, wait. Was there something specific we talked about? Or
I mean, we were just talking about good and evil, and then like you were saying that like the only true evil is one where like the intention is to be evil and not to have good. And then I basically defended Hitler for lack of to basically, in short, what I said was a defense of Hitler as not being evil. Because he wasn't intentionally evil, he just did evil things.
Well, no, in my opinion, you have to do it intentionally to be evil.
Yeah.
If you don't, like, it's more like bad on purpose equals evil. Okay, so, well, Hitler, was he evil? No, not by that definition. It's, well, not in the sense of he went into this whole thing with the intention of being bad. So that by that definition, no, he's not evil. Okay. So, yeah, but I just stopped you beforehand because, I explained that. Okay, so we don't need to talk about that again, I think, then.
Yeah.
Right, so, well, we could just, like, talk about MBTI then, I don't... Wait, let me just read this. Right. Okay. Yeah, I'd actually like to talk about MBTI now. The thing is that MBTI, like, if in my opinion, the term might, like, there's a lot of misinformation on that. Especially, it's just the test. It's not the topic, it's just the test, like the type indicator. So, because the problem I have there is because the test is not, like, I don't like the test. I don't think it's really that much of a great idea. It doesn't really work that well. Then, well, whenever I say MBTI and associate that with something I think is true, it's semantics, but like still, like, that's why I say, for example, Jungian typology instead.
Yeah. I see where you're coming with that. I think we just use MBTI so freely, especially like those of us who've been using it for a while, because like I think for most of us, the way that we get into Jungian typology is through MBTI, and so we have that like association. We don't even like take the time to like change our own verbiage, and then we're just like spreading it around because we're just continually using the term MBTI. Even though it's really not what we're talking about, because MBTI literally isn't really about the cognitive functions anyway. It's about just the personality and like the extroverted and intuitive and feeler and perceiver, like stuff like that. That's really the focus of MBTI, and it really was developed mostly for people to go into work and to find a job that fits their personality, essentially.
Okay, just because we're switching the topic, and there's a question that I want to answer, just really quickly.
Sure.
Walter, I say that, well, in my opinion, I think just thinking that when you talk to someone, assuming that they're evil is probably not that useful. But in my opinion, you could maybe try to agree on that you want to want to like that. You probably will agree with people when you probably people will, when you ask them, do you want to be a good person, they'll probably say yes. So from that point you can look at the way they think and like, okay, so you probably think that what you are doing is good, and from that point on you can be like, okay, I don't think it is actually doing that, and let me explain to you why I think that way. And yeah, so that way I think you could try to do that. But like evil, as in if you say evil is intentionally bad, doing bad stuff, then you need to find different. You could try to find people who want good and fight them, or you could find different ways of finding like maybe like self-interest and argue from that point on. But like if they don't even have something they want to do themselves, then well, you're kind of fucked. Okay, so let's go to MBTI then.
Oh, I actually want to respond to that because I agree, and I kind of want to like add on to that a little bit. Or maybe I just want, what was I going to say? But yeah, I think that like just having open conversations and appealing to the fact, well, the assumption that somebody is doing good should always be your first assumption before you get to know somebody. Even if they're doing something that you think is evil, you should automatically assume that they're trying to do good no matter what. And only upon getting to know them better can you change your opinion to like decide that like their intentions are evil. But I mean, so long as you can find out their intentions, you can help use the intentions to help them find a better solution and convince them to change their actions so that they're more like morally correct. Because I think when people are talking about good and evil, we're talking about morals, and morals can be universal but also can be situational. And not everybody sees them the same way. And so like if you see something that's like morally incorrect, but like that doesn't mean that it's evil. And actually I just think we should eradicate the terms good and evil in general, but that's just like my opinion.
Yeah, because good can be anything that you think is good. Like having a lot of money, yeah, that's good, right?
Yeah.
That would also fall into that. Yeah, I didn't argue from a very moral point, that's true.
Well, that's what makes the difference between us, isn't it?
Huh?
That's what makes the difference between us, the F and the FI and the TI there. Like, we're like, let's talk about the morals and the logic behind. Like, you tend to stay away from the moral implications of things and go from a more logical outlook to kind of like avoid that kind of. And I'm just always coming at it from a moral standpoint.
Yeah, because like I don't want to. It's like people are. It's more like this. People are very different thing, and I don't. To say that something's universally moral, like I don't. I think there are ways to act morally correct that don't really are just the thing you do because it's the moral thing to do. Because you could act, because you could also argue from self-interest, and it makes sense, but it's also accidentally also the moral thing. Like that's more my thing. But yeah. Okay, that's my opinion on that topic, I think. But like, yeah. So do we want to talk about MBTI or not? Like,
Yeah, I do. But now someone's put another question in chat,
Okay.
which he's calling
Okay.
it the ultimate question.
Okay.
Why should we do good? I think that's such an easy question to answer because you want to have
Don't you
things
want
that you
to?
like.
Yeah, don't you want to do good? Like, don't you want that? Like, okay, well, it's a personal question. Everyone has to answer that for themselves. But like, that's good by definition is something that one thinks is you know, the positive thing. Let's call it that. And positive things, well, usually you want them. So that's the thing. Like, why would you? Why want to say? Okay, let's say negative thing is you get hurt, right? And the good thing is to try to prevent that. So would you, if you say that you don't want to, that you don't want good, in that sense it would imply that you want to be hurt or whatever thing or whatever. Like, that's just, I mean, this is a very personal thing. It's probably deviating from the how what one thinks about good, but like, it's just awesome to, for example, if you say that good is helping people, it's just awesome to see how much you can help people. That's just, it's just cool. Like, you know, I mean, if you don't want to do good like that, I mean, like, it's a very, if you don't understand the question, or like the real answer to that, like, then it's difficult to really answer it because like it's really hard to explain to someone who doesn't understand that. I mean, I don't know if you really don't understand that, or it's just a question to incite some you know, thinking about it. But if you really don't, well, then it's, but yeah, but it's quite good. um, if like, I don't know, if you don't understand, then I don't know. I think like it would be useful to say, like, to talk about this, but like, I don't know. It's just, well, you should be, maybe it would help if you were a bit more specific.
Mm. Yeah,
Okay.
I think I'll just end this conversation on good and evil with good and evil should be terms that do not exist because they're so
Yeah.
polarizing that
Mhm.
they also kind of imply that there is a definable action under good and a definable action under bad. But anyway, we'll just
Mhm.
end it with that. Good and evil should be
Anyway.
eradicated from human language.
Anyway.
Anyway, so personality.
Yeah. Okay. So right. Well, where do we even start?
Well, we can start by mentioning the personalities of the people who are in this room right now. So, I'm an ENFP, and Dominic's an ENTP, and then we have Cedric. You're an ENTP as well, right? And so is Snake. And Walter, I think you said you were any of some sort, but I'm sorry, I can't remember your type. You want to go ahead and throw it in the chat? But while we're waiting for
Yeah.
them to type in
Yeah.
the
Exactly.
chat, I
Like,
tend
yeah.
to have like so many ENTPs watch my channel for some reason,
Okay.
even though.
Mm. Okay. So these, what I think is, yeah, I know him actually from like DSP comments. Okay, so one thing I think is quite difficult is about this whole thing. INFP.
Mm.
Like this labeling, like, in my opinion, we shouldn't. Don't, like, some people would like. Well, yeah, that's just good and evil. Okay, so like this whole labeling, like, for example, ENTPs are debaters and, you know, stuff like that. I don't think that's really good. Like it's really like because, but I think it's because people don't understand what the terms really mean, so they create terms or labels that they think will fit the most. But in my opinion, the term like ENTP is the title. It's not ENTP debater, but like ENTP ENTP. so um so yeah, because this is because the problem with this is that it's trying to categorize people into 16 groups, and that automatically means that there are certain things it cannot possibly say. It can't say that every ENTP likes debates, because once you find an ENTP that doesn't, well, it breaks down, right? So, and I don't think that every ENTP necessarily likes debating. They're like, that's a maybe like they like discourse or whatever, but that's not. It's just too much of a claim to like, you need to really prove that. You need to find every ENTP and to look at, okay, do they say that they like debates? And like, that's like really unlikely. Same for people who are like FJs, right? Who have FE quite high. Like, they don't have to be people that like people. Like, I mean, we just talked about this. I think Hitler was an INFJ. Like, I mean, like, he disliked certain people. You reverse those stereotypes, they make this whole thing just break together instantly. But what if you think about this and you exclude the things that it can't say, while thinking about what it says, which in my opinion is just the functioning, how people work, then actually you get quite, it's quite abstract still. It's a maybe intuitive thing that you can get what it really is saying, because okay, well, it's not saying that people are debaters or whatever. So the problem there is that I don't like this as a predictor, is in the sense that maybe the Big Five is, because it's like one of the best predictors ever in like psychology, like, because it's mainly a statistical thing, like it's just about statistical relations. But I think this is a good system to, not necessarily system, but like to understand people and how they get to conclusions and how their thought process is construed in a way, where they start and stuff like that. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, I think that Jungian typology is really helpful for learning how people come, like you said, how they come to conclusions, so that you can understand where they're coming from and kind of have a glimpse into why they came to the conclusion that they came. It's not going to tell you what conclusion they're going to come to. It's not going to tell you like how creative they are. It's not going to tell you what their interest level in certain subjects are. What those statistics show you, like when you take an MBTI personality test and it's like, here are some of the jobs that you would like, it's actually correlational. It's not causational. So like being an ENFP, there's a lot of ENFPs who are journalists. Does that mean that every single ENFP is going to want to be a journalist? No. What it means is that there are a lot of journalists who happen to be ENFPs. And like with ISTJs, there are a lot of ISTJs who tend to be in an analytical or a managerial role, especially like middle management. But does that mean that every ISTJ wants to be that? Does that mean every ISTJ should be that? No, it means that there is a correlation between type and work. And what those tests tell you when they give you the answers of like what job would be good for you, they're saying these are jobs that commonly people of this personality type tend to go into, not the other way around. It's not a determiner for what job you should go into. It's just saying, here's what other people of this type are in and what kind of jobs they do.
Right. Especially like in America, is that I heard that's a thing where they give you a test and then they try to find out whether or not they should employ you or not, which I think is just terrible, because like I don't think that the test has, like, psychology tests can be quite unreliable. Like it's quite difficult to be really sure about that, because you just have to listen to those people who say that they take a test and 2 weeks later they take another test and it's a whole different, the completely different result. Well, I mean, if the test works, well, then people just don't know how to take such a test, which, you know, as soon as they know how to take a test, well, now it's, well, I don't know, that might be actually something they teach you, but like, it's just not, it's just so problematic to be, in my opinion, reliable enough.
Yeah, let me add on to that before you continue, and like give you a real world example of how exactly screwed up it is, because actually I applied to work at Starbucks back when I was like your age. I was 17 and I applied to work at Starbucks. And I had to take the personality test. And what I did is I used to be very like in the middle about almost everything. Like I couldn't really decide which was more important than the other. So I would put a lot of like middle of the road answers. Then after I was 18, I got a job at Office Depot. And the reason that I got that job is because one of the managers there, she told me, she said, they're going to give you a personality test. Make sure that you answer an extreme yes or extreme no to everything. Do not put any middle of the road answers, right? And it was at that point, I took the test, put extreme answers on one side or the other, and they told me my personality, and they were like, okay, you're a yellow-green personality, whatever that means. And not even 4 months later, I applied again at Starbucks using this exact same rule of giving extreme answers as opposed to middle of the road answers. And they called me back the same day that I submitted the
okay. Did you get the same result?
Oh no, I got a completely different result than the first time I took the Starbucks personality test, because the first time I took it, I put like very middle of the road answers because I was honest. And then when I took it again a year later, after being taught this trick of giving extreme yes or no answers, they called me back the same day that I submitted my application.
Yeah.
I cheated the system.
Wow. Well, basically. Yeah, it's like they don't even want. Yeah, I mean, like in that sense, like no, they suck. It's not just that. It's not just the problem that they are, in my opinion, they're pretty unreliable. I think doesn't take much for people to agree on that. But now, like, actually, they force you to just. What the fuck? Not even do the test right, making it probably not more unreliable than it was before. Which is, wow, that's like, yeah, no, that's not good. And like you can't really change your type in my like I think that once you were able to make this thing like a useful thing where you realize, okay, well, it actually makes 100% sense. I mean, this is kind of like pseudoscience in the way that Freud had it, where you can explain it in any way you want, which I don't actually think is the thing with like, you know, like the functions. I don't think it's necessarily like that, but like when you notice that, okay, this makes sense, well, then it's good, like, as in, because it's more like a tool, in my opinion. Then it's like, okay, to understand people. That's how I think about Jungian typology and like the whole functions and stuff like that. So if you try to understand someone to use this tool to understand people, so for example, let's use an example with me, like thing with ENTPs or like ENFPs too is that they're often criticized that what they are saying is like, did you even think about what you just said, right? That kind of thing. Which, if you take the functions, it's like, well, no, probably not, because if in, let's say, an ENP is in a state where they're really enthusiastic and just like, hammering all those ideas out there, this brainstorming thing, this brainstorm mode, which is probably just pure NE, where you just take the first function in the whole process and don't move on later in the process. You just take your idea. Now you can understand that, hey, wait, what they just said, they didn't think about that. They just hammered an idea out there that might be a good direction or something, whatever. But it's not really something that content-wise they thought about with the judgment functions. But they just hammered, they got something and then just said it. People can now understand in ENTP or ENFP that way because they can understand the functions. They know that, taking me as an example, they know that I am an ENTP, and now they know, okay, this is a person that has NE first. So this was probably just something where they used NE and nothing. They didn't really do anything more. Otherwise, people might think, oh wow, how could someone think this? What kind of person is this? Right. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's funny that you say that, because that's actually something that people say to me all the time. Specifically, where did you come up with that? That makes no sense to what we're talking about right now. Like, I don't see the correlation to what you're saying right now to anything that we just talked about. That is like the complaint I get most of the time when I just like turn into NE mode and I'm just like, oh, maybe this. And they're like, did you even think about that? And I'm like, no. Like, you can tell me it's bad. Like, it's when you think that I believe that idea so wholeheartedly, that's when I get annoyed, because like I just came up with an idea. Like, that's all it was. Like, tell me I'm wrong. Don't get offended by my idea. Like, it's just an idea.
Yeah, exactly. That's like, that's I don't know. It's just, or you can. Yeah, it's hard to describe, but you can understand why certain people are in a conflicted state. So, right. So, for example, maybe with the problem with this whole thing is that the best example will be me, because I know the most about the most about how I think, basically, right? So, like, if not, then, well, that would not be cool. But I try to watch my mind. So in this whole thing, I'll be probably the most examples will probably be about me when I say something about me, and yeah. So just as I don't want to be self-absorbed, so that's why I say this. So right. I might get the problem of like, I want people to, like, I don't want necessarily how do I say this? Like, it's not I want people to like have fun or whatever, like just I want things that I want. Well, it's the same thing about like wanting good. It's not like I don't want. I want things that are good, obviously. So let's say I have this problem that my third function, extroverted feeling, would be where that mostly, like, I would to do that, to achieve this goal or whatever, I would mostly have to rely on that, but it's like overshadowed by the other two ones, but not as much that it's like too much. But like, there will be situations where I want something and it's not I can't, like, it's problematic for me to actually to, well, because it's only like, because like it comes right after having to neglect that with the introverted thinking, maybe, where it's just out of my sphere of, like, I don't think about that, like that's not inside of my brain at the moment. I might regret certain things that I do afterwards, after I did them, because I now feel like, oh wait, no, that's not what I actually wanted or whatever. Which would be a place where I would start to get like conflicted, and it's not like, like that's just, that's not what, there was no example in there. What the fuck, but like, it's just an example of for how that might maybe play out in an ENTP where I would get conflicted, and I think that's, well, it has to be. All the other types have to have those kinds of moments too.
Right.
Like they could also use a different example that's maybe a bit more specific about my mother, who's an ISFJ. So yeah, right. So what she would probably have the problem with, or like what she has problems with, is when at work people say like stuff that's just like, it doesn't even make sense, and like it's not how you treat people. Like, it's just like disagreement for the sake of disagreement, and it doesn't make sense, and that's kind of what's conflicting her in a way. That like, how do I make stuff that's in an introverted thinking way, like making sense, because she also goes through this thinking step in, this, but as in this third slot, she's like, well, that's not like, firstly, I want people to like, act like respectful and all these kind of more things, but it also doesn't even make sense. And it's like, well, I don't want to speak up to that because I don't want to maybe like make them angry or whatever. It's like, she just doesn't want to be such a person, but it also just doesn't make no sense. And yeah, that would make her conflicted, for example. God, I hate it when I don't say anything.
No, let me kind of like try to recap what I got from that, and hopefully you'll feel a little better about what you said. So like I'm also like combining my own knowledge of like what an ISFJ is like functionally. So like with SI and FE, she's got like these ideas, especially based on the past and what she's seen and what she's learned, for what is like socially acceptable behavior and like how you can act when you're in like a workplace setting, for example, which is where it sounds like this is coming from, is her work specifically. So she has that. And then when people do things that act out against that, against her idea of what she's seen and what is like socially acceptable to her, it doesn't make sense to her. But then it becomes like, does she break her SIFE? Does she break like what she believes to be socially acceptable behavior to tell them that they're being socially unacceptable, like that they're doing things that don't align with her? Or does she stay with her SIFE and continue to act that way and not make sense of the behavior?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that makes, yes. So like, she basically just like holds it in a sense. It just doesn't really articulate that. But it's more like, I wouldn't say that SI necessarily is about simply like memorizing or stuff like that. I mean, it's more like it's people with SI are considered to be good at memorizing things is because SI is mainly about this feeling what's happening to you. So when, for example, my mother would feel bad for speaking up or like interrupting or whatever, she would really feel that. So that would make such an experience would make the memory quite, or like, more intense in a way, which makes the whole memorization easier. And I think it's more of a, well, yeah, she just doesn't like to do, you know, to do those things, so that's why she doesn't say them. But even though internally it's like cognitive dissonance, it's creating cognitive dissonance in that sense, where she, you know, that's bullshit what they say, but she doesn't speak up for them in that sense. So yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't have anything to add to that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but like, it's, you know, we got to this by understanding, right? So like that this whole thing helps people understand. So what I think is that it's quite interesting to see when you disagree with someone on a type, because now you can be like, okay, wait a minute, we should, either the problem is that we don't understand the thing, or we don't understand the person and what's going on in their head, and we misinterpret that. So we could go to a more specific situation of such an occurrence. Maybe, I don't know. Depends.
Go ahead.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, that would, for example, we could, well, maybe like Jordan Peterson was a thing we had earlier. We could talk about. So like, because the thing is that I think he's an INFJ.
And what leads you to that position?
Oh, well, firstly, well, what leads me to that? Like, just, well, the answer should be just looking at him and trying to understand how he thinks. But like, the whole thing is that he's definitely someone that I think is has FE. But I also don't think that he could be, like, I don't think that, I also think he's definitely an intuitive, but
oh, your mic went out. But it's okay. I mean, we heard that you definitely think that he has FE, and you definitely think that he's intuitive. So we got that.
right. So, well, also TI, right? So it's connected.
Right.
So that only leaves us with ENTP, with INTP, and ENFJ and INFJ, right? Those are all the only intuitives that also have FE/TI.
Right.
Now, okay, so let's start with INTP. INTP, isn't he really an INTP? Like, okay, he definitely, like, he does seem more on the introverted side of things, but the thing is that when he says what he, like, when he describes his own thought process, the it's not the last thing he would describe goes through his head that you know, like, for example, that's concerned with like FE is in the sense of how people behave and stuff like that, right? That's mostly an FE thing. And well, when I say this, it already, like, well, what I just said is already something that would make me conclude that he's an INFJ, because it's not like it's the first thing he thinks about. Like, he does seem like a perceiver in the sense that he has a perception function first, like introverted or extroverted, doesn't matter really. And so, like, let's say ENTP would mean that he well, he does look at he is a perceiver, but like, well, it's not like the things he says, or like the intuitive things he says, are necessarily. The way I think about it is that an extroverted perception function treats things as they are objective, as in the sense that what you see is other people can see it too, and you see it the way other people could see it too. For example, when we as extroverted intuitives, when we talk, we say ideas and it's immediately like we can accept that idea and now we can work with it. That's what I mean with objective. Like when you are an introverted perceiver, like SI or NI, mostly it's what you feel like maybe in a subjective or like maybe in a filtered way or whatever. Like it's very specific to you. So what he says, right? So when he talks, like, it definitely is like people can try to understand him, but that's not the first the real thing there. Like he doesn't. It's not like it's so. It's not. It's very surface level. Like it's not. Well, no, wait, surface. It's like below the actual below what's well really. It's just not extroverted enough. In that sense, it's hard to describe that way. And like, I mean, what I just said earlier about the way how often he says he thinks about the person is that it's like, okay, let's say he's an INFJ, right? So that means that 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 the feeling and thinking, just like in an ENTP, is, well, it's quite balanced. It's more balanced than an INTP or ENFJ. So the way, like when he says, for example, that he looks at people, it's really this way of like, do you have these intuitive, like this intricate, deep, subjective, intuitive thing, right? But right after that, you have people, which this whole perception thing is about. So you could say in the case of Newman interview, he was very interested in looking at how she acts and like what she's really doing. And right after that, there is the introverted thinking part where he's like, wait, what is this? Like I've thought about this a lot, or like with which he does, with like, I don't know, and he built this whole understanding of something and this whole scope, and he can like now with introverted thinking navigate that. Okay, well, she means this, and you know that like that's how I imagine that, like this thought process in a more specific way, and the way with which I justify this is that he's someone that really, like, he'll obviously be very hard to type because he's very much trying to not be unbalanced.
Right.
So that's usually where and how you can try to find out the personality type, right? So so when you use, for example, I don't know, did you already say this? I don't know. That would be a counter argument. So I don't want to take this ahead of what you actually said. So I'll just let you say that first. But like, I just think that there's still something I want to say to that. No. You can respond if you want.
So I mean, I see what I mean. Either way, I think like INTP and ENFJ are completely out of the question because I just think he's too balanced between thinking and feeling as well. And what I think too is just like the way that he takes like the questions that are thrown at him, to me, just like maybe I'm a little like messed up in my head because I do use like micro expressions to a small degree to help me type people. I don't put extreme amount of weight on it, but it definitely does influence me in how I type people. And he definitely does a lot of anythings. And specifically, there's a conversation between him and Russell Brand that, oh, I forgot what it was called. Oh, Under the Skin or something. And just like the way that they were bouncing ideas off of each other, it was like the ideas were springing out of nowhere for both of them, and they were just playing with the ideas. And it almost seemed like whatever Russell would say, like Peterson would be like, you know, I see this, and I see this, and I see this, and I see this, and I see how all those things are related to that one thing that you've said. And he does that a lot, like where he'll like bring up multiple things where he sees that it's related. And I mean, at least from my personal experience with NI users, whether it's their dominant or second function, they don't tend to do that very often. They'll usually see like one overlying thing. They normally, at least from my experience, I don't see them branch out as much as take what is being said and go down a linear path with that. I see them much more with the linear than with like these multiple paths. And like this specific conversation between him and Russell, he was much more relaxed than he was in the conversation with BBC, where in the BBC conversation, he was very on guard because she kept attacking him. She kept like misusing his words, so he had to think more about what he was saying, and he had to be more careful with what he was saying because he knew anything he said could or would be used against him. So he was more on that like, hold on, let me see what she's doing, let me take that time to figure it out. But with the conversation between him and Russell Brand, he was much more relaxed. You could see it in his posture. You could see it in his responses. He was just much more relaxed in the conversation. And therefore, in my opinion, I think that he was more natural, like more behaving more naturally in that situation because he didn't have to defend himself. He was just having a good conversation. They didn't agree on everything, but they talked things out. And like one thing specifically, Russell is like, he's doing this whole thing about like how the 12-step program, the like, especially like for like alcoholics and like drug addicts, there's like the 12-step program. And he's saying how like that program can be used for any addiction that's going on in your life, right? And he talks about the first step, which is admitting there's a problem. And then Peterson comes in and he's like, yeah, so that kind of like addresses this, and this in terms of psychology. Like he said at first, like, you know, that kind of addresses 3 things with psychology. And he started talking and he was like, that gives up like a level of surrendering. And he's like, wait, actually there's 4. And so he says surrendering again. And then he goes into the next one. And I can't think of all the exact answers, but it just seemed very like NE. Like I could see myself talking that way. Like, whereas like with somebody, and like specifically, I use my boyfriend as an example a lot because I spend a lot of time with him and talk a lot with him, and he definitely has introverted intuition as his primary function and is an INFJ. He would normally go one thing at a time. Like he would like he would see the argument, and like yes, he might have agreed, but he would keep it much more intact with what was being said. He wouldn't expand on it so much. And I mean, maybe that's like bad to compare the 2 of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Like, I think introverted intuition or like perception in general is more about, or intuition is more about going like about one idea. But the with Jordan Peterson, it's the way I imagine is that he is concerned with this topic all the time. So meaning that he will be able to actually to like, well, how do you say? to to the thing I would say that the problem with introverted intuition would mostly be is that the scope is really the scope is it's not really concerned with having like the full scope. But when Jordan Peterson says, okay, well, I really want to make this correct and stuff like that, I really want to think about this, then I will have to just make this to get the whole scope of the whole thing. And then he has all these thoughts kind of like when ordered already. He says that he uses writing to think, in the sense that that way he kind of like orders all his thoughts and stuff like that. And well, I think that way he could get the whole scope of the whole thing. So when he talks about these things, he's already thought about them, and he knows where in his whole thing, his whole thought system in a way, those things that other people are talking about, because he tries to understand them, INFJ, in this typical INFJ style. He now compares this to, okay, where is this in the whole thing I've already thought about, and now he can identify them. Now the whole thing, well, no, actually there's four, could arise. The way I think about it is that maybe he just, well, now realized that, oh no, wait, actually, oh wait, sorry, train of thought. No wait, actually, I missed a certain thing. It actually also affects. So that's how I would explain it in a way. So yeah, but this everything is it's definitely based on how integrated he tries to be. So yeah.
But then let me pose this question to you really fast. Okay. He's an older man. Like, he's like at least in his 50s. I don't know exactly how old he is. We can look it up. It's not really that important, but he's older. So he's been around the block, and he didn't really start becoming very influential until later on in his life. Now, for an ENF or an ENP in general to be successful, they eventually have to, like, if they say, for me, for example, like, I have some concept that I really want to get across. I'm going to work really hard to make sure that I'm saying it correctly and that I have the backup knowledge, so I don't say something that I don't mean. Like, because I'm going to have that forethought that, like, when I get into a public forum, people are going to tear apart my argument. People are going to be able to attack it. And so I need to prepare, and I need to be sure that I know exactly what I want to say, because I feel really passionately about this particular subject. And yes, in a way, I like just being like free with the ideas, and I really like playing with the ideas. However, I also, if I'm really passionate about something, I'm going to take the time to make sure that I'm like completely prepared to speak about it. And another thing that you said about him writing it down, to me, I see that as externalizing it and taking the time to organize the thoughts. Whereas, like, I would think, from what I've seen from NI and SI users that I know, is that it's mostly happening internally already, and they're thinking about the same thing over and over and over again and building upon that like singular idea. Whereas an NE person would have the singular idea and then need to take the time to like expand to be able to explain how they came to that conclusion. And if he came, like, he studies psychology a lot, he's taken a lot of time to learn and study, and he talks about a lot of different subjects, which could be either type, because they're intuitive, so like that would. But where was I going with that? I had don't laugh.
Sorry. Oh, fuck.
But basically, the point of what I was saying is, like, yeah, like, he is having like this overall message, but I also see that if I were in a similar situation, like where I want to be further on down my life, like there are things that I've already thought about that I want to be able to expand upon later and like actually start telling other people about. I want to make sure that I have it completely correct before I start telling other people, because I feel so passionately that it is the right thing to do. I want to make sure that it can't be broken down. And that doesn't make me an INFJ. Or an INTJ.
Well, now the thing is that he didn't want to necessarily, according to himself, he didn't want to organize those things necessarily so that he could tell others. Really, it's mostly just so that he can understand that he started to get popular because something happened where he had to speak up, because it was just, personally, he just know that he was definitely disagreeing with that, and it was and he saw something that's, if this goes that way, which is, by the way, quite the introverted intuitive thing, he sees that, okay, well, this is not headed a good way. Like, I need to speak up. Well, then he did, and now suddenly he gets quite popular and stuff like that. So, well, he kind of, like, the way, this is more, well, this is hard to say, but like, this is the way, like, INFJs or IFJs don't necessarily want to speak up or anything. Like, it's not really their intention, but mostly it's like, okay, well, I want to help, or like, but they don't really plan on like doing a big thing or whatever. So the way he views this whole thing is really, it's more about, okay, well, I kind of have to speak up. The way I thought about all these things, like, I have to. So it's not like he prepared his thoughts so that he can talk to anyone. Not like the way you framed it. It's more like he wanted to figure something out himself, or like he sees a good opportunity to do something, or like something like that. It's not really something, it's hard to describe, because I think this is how how an INFJ would get into something like that. Right? So he says that it's quite exhausting for him most of the time. Like, and especially because he's such a special person. Like, that's the ultimate argument for an INFJ.
See, I can't help but wonder if you're biased because you think everyone's an INFJ. No, just kidding. But
because everyone's special.
If they're special, they're an INFJ. I mean, come on.
Yeah, everyone's special, so everyone's an INFJ.
No, actually, my boyfriend was saying something this afternoon, like when we were on our little like lunch break or whatever. He was like, "I'm just so special, no one understands me." And I'm like, if only you knew, because he's not as big on like Myers-Briggs and all that kind of stuff. He like thinks of it as like limiting and whatnot, which I get his perspective and whatnot, but that doesn't stop me from being obsessed with it. But he was like, without even knowing that INFJs are known as the special butterflies or the special little snowflakes, he's like, nobody understands me. I can't remember the context in which he said that, but anyway.
They're not intentionally, like, they don't want to be.
Exactly.
It's weird, but it's like this IFJ kind of trouble of, well, I have an introverted thing first, but like I want to interact with this extroverted feeling of, I also want to, people and stuff like that, right? So
well, and herein also lies another problem, like INFJs or IXFJs are the most extroverted introverts, and ENXPs are the most introverted. So really, like, any argument on him being like too introverted or too extroverted, like, kind of goes out the window, because both types are more introverted or extroverted than like other people of similar types.
Well, yeah.
But somebody's asking us to
SI.
talk about SI.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically it's like I think what's his name? God. Shit, like, wait a minute. Let me look it up for a second.
Okay.
Michael Pierce. He made an analogy, I think, about how NI or SI are kind of like SI, like NI is more like, okay, you throw a stone into the water, right? And that's what you perceive, basically, that the stone has been thrown in the water. Now, no, wait, like NI would try to be like, okay, well, why, like, there's something, I know there's something like happened with the water, but like, how would that have happened? Like, that would be what NI would be concerned with, whereas SI would be more like concerned with, okay, this ripple effect, like describing that in a way, like it's more about the actual experience of how something happens, and like and it's like weirdly categorizing that, or like, it's just like concerned with that. And you could say that people are inclined to do that in certain ways of, smell, or like sound, or like maybe even association, and you can see how that actually can be connected with extroverted intuition, I think. So yeah, so I would say that SI is more really about what you feel is happening to you, and all that kind of stuff. All right. So yeah. So yes, I don't know. Maybe if you have something to say, like, I don't know. I don't know. It's like just talking about SI is like, wait, I don't know.
See, the problem with SI is that it's like so low and so deprioritized, because we're so out of balance with it, with having so much NE, that we don't really take the time. But like, it's hard because like as I've gotten older, I've learned to use it more. And I've found the value in using it as a method to like keep myself sane, so to speak. Like I need it to a certain level to keep myself from getting too out of whack, which is kind of just like taking the time, or the way that I see it is like taking the time to look over my experiences and look over the ideas that I've come up with and store them in a way that makes sense, and like kind of prioritize these different ideas that I've come up with and the different experiences that I've had and the different facts that I've come over. Like I need to store them in a specific way so that I can like use them again and not just like lose them. Because sometimes when you get into that like very any type, you just like start saying so many things and you don't even remember what you said. Just kind of like how we were talking in between. You were like, the reason I asked is because I don't remember most of what I said. And also like making sure to organize the life around you and kind of create habits, which for somebody who has SI, habits are a lot, like if they have it in higher in their stack, habits are a lot easier to create and also be in control of. Whereas for any Dom, these habits that we create are really hard to maintain because we always come up with a new way to do something or a better way to do something, or we want to try something new to do, even if it doesn't make any sense as to why. We're just like, oh, we've come up with it, we should try it.
Yeah, especially because we don't really, like, it's just literally, if you take the stack, literally the last thing you think about is that. Like, as in it's just, well, wait, oh my god. Like, we do something and it's like, well, is this even, like, we're not really aware of how that would change something like that. Like, maybe, like, you could say SI, if you say that SI, if you want to label it, you could say that it may be self-awareness, in the sense of you're aware of yourself and your experience. That would be, then I think actually that's not that far from what it is. Like, that's kind of literally the last thing that you know, ENPs would be concerned with. So
yeah, it's like a matter of even taking the time, because like the way that I kind of view like how our personality works is it's like the things that we prioritize in our mind, like what we fill our thoughts with and what we fill our actions with, is determined on your personality, and or vice versa. Your personality is determined on the way that you prioritize certain things. And like we're going to prioritize ideation all the time. We're going to prioritize finding ideas and finding connections between things, because one, it's fun to us, it's the most fun thing to do, and also it's the easiest thing to do. It's like our mind does this really easily and really naturally, so we're gonna like eventually catch on how easy it is, and we're gonna build on that. Like when we're a kid and we're developing, this is like what helped us understand the world. We were like, okay, we see these things happening, we see these connections between these things, and then that's what helped us to start learning. And then obviously like the middle two functions is what helps us like organize it and kind of like prioritize what things to pay attention, like our bias function, or like our TI or FI. I know you don't really like the word bias that much, but like our TI and FI is kind of like what helps us prioritize which ideas to save, so to speak, like which ideas are more important than other ideas. Because otherwise, we're just creating a bunch of ideas, we're just seeing a bunch of ideas, and we don't know which ones matter the most, because they're just there all the time, and we see all of them. And it's our like second function that helps us kind of like see which ones we should keep a hold of, which ones we should remember. And because of that, we're like neglecting ourselves a lot. There's a reason why any DOMs tend to bump into walls a lot and like tend to not be chosen for sports and like that kind of stuff. Because, or like, there's a reason why when we were playing that game when I was a kid and we like pulled our sleeves down and we're like slapping each other with like the end of the fabric, I accidentally smacked somebody, because that like awareness of like where my body is and what my body is doing is not there. And ironically, they say that INFPs and INTPs are the like SE blind. But in some ways, I think they're more aware of their body than an any DOM is. Like, I run into walls all the time. Like, it's so bad. Like, I can see the wall. I see that it's there, and I still run into it. Like, my elbow bumps into so many things. I have so many bruises out of nowhere. It's just like ridiculous.
Yeah, and I don't really, same, and I don't really care about them.
Exactly. Like,
oh, there was something in there. Well, actually, there's reason to believe that it's more of a genetic thing. Like you're born with the type. Like, well, firstly, why not? And secondly, this is about cognition. So it would make sense that if you look at it from maybe compared neurologically, maybe there's actually like certain brain regions where, you know, like it would make so much sense that, for example, like let's again take NE, there's like NE dominant, like ENPs, and like I mean, there's probably a brain region that's well, whose purpose is to, you know, do these kinds of things that extroverted intuition does, like, for example, combining, or like combining like certain ideas and thinking about what that might be and stuff, like, you know, like stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also there's actually the only thing that I find really interesting and that kind of like made me stop and think a little was that they have superpowers. Well, I mean, I didn't buy the course or whatever. I don't really like, you know, I don't, you know, I'm not, I don't like it that much. So I'll probably not even buy it. But like, he said that he found a system where you actually have looks that repeat, or like certain choices that as in patterns that repeat based on the types he has. Meaning that, let's say, for example, hair color, right? Anything like that, or the way you look, which that's determined by your genes. So if he also finds the correlation between that and his types, well, that means that depending on how close his system is to the one I think about, that actually could be a genetic thing. So yeah. So I don't really think it's much. I don't know. Like, I think that there's more reason to believe that than it just is like the thing that you just used and found useful, and now it's just there. It's just maybe it's like it's set in stone that you use it, and then you learn to use it and stuff like that. I think that could be a better explanation. Now, there was something else. Right. I have thought a bit about the whole roles of the functions and their places. So maybe I could, you know, give some ideas of maybe how I think it might be to that, if you don't want to say something about what I just said.
I was gonna say, oh, okay. So like, with the genetics of it, actually, I think that's like an interesting thought. I think that both actually come into play, but that's kind of like a constant conversation in psychology in general. Is like, what is nature and what is nurture? And I do think that both play a huge role. And it's also interesting to look at families and see where the trends lie. Like, for example, I'm pretty sure my dad was an ENFP, and I'm an ENFP. And I'm pretty sure, I'm like 99% sure my mom is an INFJ, and then my older sister is an ENFJ. But then we have two siblings who don't really fit that much into it. I have an ISFP and an ESTP brother and sister. So, like, some of us have similar traits to our parents, but then why would we have, so we have these like highly intuitive people, like INFJ is like, SE is last, like you're not going to have her, unless like we're going to talk about recessive traits and dominant traits and all that and get complicated, and that would take science that doesn't even exist yet, and may never exist, who knows, or at least in our lifetime or whatever. But I've also heard a lot of people say that they tend to, like, there's a lot of a certain type of person in their family. Like, there's a lot of people who have a lot of SIs in their family, like SI DOMs, like ISTJs and ISFJs and ESFJs. And then there's other people who, like this one guy was just telling me, like, he's an ISFP and his dad's an ISFP. And so, I mean, that I definitely think there's weight to the idea that personality is genetic, in the terms of Jungian personality and cognitive functions. There is something genetic about it. And I was also having the thought while you were talking about this, is quasi-related, but like, as we've evolved as humans, certain needs would start to arise, and those would cause a risk, like certain cognitive functions to become more prominent. And it could also explain why there are more SE and SI dominant people than there are intuitive dominants. However, I think it's more equal now. But like in the past, like just evolutionarily wise, it would be really important to have SE to be aware of the surroundings so that you can react in a timely manner if you're getting attacked, if there's weather, if whatever. Like you need to be able to be quick to react. So SE would be really important in an evolutionary standpoint, and SI would also be really important in the ability to like remember and know which mushrooms are safe and what foods can you cook and what foods can you eat raw and like that kind of stuff. But anyway, I'm going to stop about that because then we could accidentally go down a path we probably don't know enough about. But
so what the explanation like this is going a very intuitive way where people might think we start to say bullshit. Is okay. So if you want to take genetics in that way and like inheriting stuff, maybe like maybe you got the ENFP genes from like your dad, and like from was it your mother, like your STP or an ENFJ well brothers or like other siblings, they got it from INFJ, right? Because the functions are the same.
True.
So that might be the thing, right?
And then our poor little ISFP sister. That is
right. Oh, and don't forget. Well, no, don't forget. But like in my family, it's like ISFJ, ISTJ parents plus except for me, it's only SPs. So like brother ISFP, sister, another brother ESTP, another sister ESFP, and I'm ENTP. So which is also quite interesting that we are all perceivers. I don't know. Well, yeah, I don't know. Like maybe this could be interesting, but maybe this could also just be bullshit.
Right.
Right, so wait,
like someone put in the comments, like, could we breed people to become ENTPs? I don't know if it works. I don't think we know enough about it to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, like this is only an arbitrary system to understand something. I don't think this is definite. Like there will probably this is not. It's just not refined to be.
I think we're at the point where this is an idea that should be given weight and should be thought about and researched, but might not necessarily have any weight. But it can't be discounted yet because there's no proof against it.
It's like, I mean, definitely there is something to it in the sense that, well, to understand people, it's helpful. But like the thing is that it's more like those kinds of ideas that could turn out as wrong. But like, I mean, when Newton, like again, this example of Einstein proving something wrong, right? So when we earlier.
Oh, your sound went out again. But I can kind of like, you were talking about how Einstein originally said something like there's particles in light, and then he proved it through a solar eclipse of some sort.
Yeah, what I mean, I'm just taking this analogy as saying that, okay, we knew something about something, right? We had knowledge about it, but it turned out to be wrong. However, we still had knowledge about that there is something. So, and I think that maybe it turns out that this idea is wrong. However, knowing that there is knowledge to be had in that direction, I don't think that's wrong because not we, but like, because like I, for example, it really is something that well, we can explain people with this. We can, and like we, like it's, at least I can understand this whole thing, or like not this whole thing, but I can understand the thought process of people. So there's definitely knowledge about this. So saying that this might turn out to be wrong, I don't know. I don't think that. I just don't think that's true. I think that, in the sense that this definitely there is something. Wait a minute. I don't think this would be will be abolished. No way. In the sense of what you said, that this is worth to think about, but it might also turn out to be entirely wrong, and like just like like you said, it's so strong, and I don't think that is true. But I can't remember the correct wording, which is kind of
Well, I guess
because that
I was also like internally I was combining other ideas. So like that's why sometimes things come out all weird, because I think about a lot of things, and what I'm trying to say is like a singular idea, and sometimes it's like combining some of the things that I'm thinking about. But basically like what I meant was like I think Any works this way a lot, is that we come up with good ideas that have partial truths in them, and like we often get discounted because there's like no proof to it yet, but we have these ideas that we think like so sure are a possibility, like because we see the possibility for it and we know that possibility exists, and like to get it discounted before it's even researched is, at least for me, a huge frustration, because I see a lot of things that have the potential to be very true, and at least in my experience often get put down before they're even thought about, because one part of it or one section of it or one aspect of that idea that I didn't even say, but like the assumptions that come along with the idea that you give, people will discount it.
Yeah, that's retarded. Yeah, I agree.
I think that's what I meant when I was saying like it could turn out to be false, but there is something good and true about it, and that's why we should go after it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it's true. Okay. Like, look, this is funny because actually, seven people who are watching. Was it a joke or not? Like, that for me it was that this will probably not just be like, if we start 17 o'clock my time, we have about 8 hours until it gets late for me. As in, it would probably take a talk at least 8 hours because we, like, I don't know, it's just, there's so much to talk about all the time. And it's like, well, yeah, the 8 hours already are almost full. Like, that's, I don't know, it's just funny to me. It's like, I don't know, I just, maybe, it's funny to know. Especially considering that the title of this live stream is German politics, and we're not talking about German politics anymore.
Well,
this is the epitome of ME.
Yes, it is. But I always do that. Like on these kind of talks, it always starts out with like a generic overarching theme, and then it tends to go in a different direction. And what's funny, guys, is like Wednesday when we were talking about, like, we were confirming the time to do this and everything, he was like, let's shoot for another 8 hours. And he was totally joking, but half knew that the possibility existed. And here we are. Our first stream was 3.5 hours, and already this one is over 3 hours. So I'm not exactly sure when it started, but it's been going for so long that my Chromebook is about to die. The one that I'm using to look at the comments.
Wait, how much charge?
It has 15 minutes left. No, my this computer
Okay.
I have plugged in, but this
Okay, good,
computer that has the chat, I don't. So I could always just pull up the chat again on the other
Yeah.
on this computer, so I'm seeing it. But it just like makes my computer heat up, like, and gets the fan going. So that's why I split it
Okay.
up.
Like, what the fuck? Okay. So, right. No, it's like, okay, it's like now I'm noticing, like now that I said it, like, no, it's actually, oh, this is funny because now I'm actually, it's like SI started to kick in as in, okay, and now I'm realizing that, for example, I'm not as awake anymore as and when we started to talk, stuff like that. But it's no problem. It's like it's just funny.
Well, it's
This is
already 1900 my time, so
yeah.
it's got to be
It's
pretty late, like well after midnight, so like 2 a.m.
7. Yes, exactly.
But you only just woke up before we started, so
Yeah, I know. It's like, for example, I don't know if my parents, like, they probably are asleep already, stuff like that. But like, you know, yeah, right. Yeah. I'm just looking because I have alarms set up, and I don't want. Okay, I don't want an alarm to go off here. It's just not cool for the ears.
not cool
So
for the
okay,
ears. That
yeah.
is the quote of the evening. That is not cool for the ears.
Yeah, like, come on, was that bad English? Like,
No, it was just funny.
okay,
Just like
yeah, I know. It's like, okay, I don't know how to express this. Now let's just create some kind of phrase that
yeah.
expresses what you mean, but sounds weird. That's mostly, I do that with words too. When I say for example, I have a word, but like I don't want this to be an adjective. Maybe I want this to be a noun. So I'm like, okay, let's just add ness or whatever to it, and now you have a word that expresses what you mean. It's just an adjective. It's not just an adjective anymore. It's a noun, and it changes the meaning. But the characteristic of the adjective is just modified as a noun. So that's like, I don't know. I think that's quite cool sometimes. It's just
Yeah.
when
I
people are,
actually think that German does that a lot actually with their words. They'll just like
yeah,
add
you can.
part to it and like suddenly it's a whole new word and like that's something
Yeah, well, there are two things there. Like, the first thing is that the German grammar actually, yes, yes, that works. Yes, that works because it's like, I think it's called just compound. Like, we just add a new word to that word and make, it's like maths.
Yeah.
But what I do is I go a step further and I'm like, okay, we have this certain, I think it's called morpheme. We have morphemes, and well, I just compound morphemes to it. So it's not just that I could, for example, add nouns, but like now I can actually create new, not just words as in stuff that exists, but in maybe like a verb or a noun or an adjective, even though it wasn't before. So yeah, but I don't think that, like, people who are very restricted about can only say stuff that exist in a dictionary or whatever.
Like the French.
No, actually, we have people in German too, like, who are, well, no, that word doesn't exist or whatever, so that's kind of sad sometimes.
Yeah. English
The
speakers do
hell
that too.
of yeah. Well, no, I mean, like, there are people in Germany, like, it's not like we're completely free in what we say, like there still are like things where, like, for example, let's say teachers or whatever, they'll say, well, no, that's no word or whatever, like, which is kind of like sad because I'm not really, when I say stuff, I'm not really about like using words but like I'm trying to communicate something, right? So that's, well, that's what I mean, like that's what language is about. So you know, I don't know, it's like just I don't like that, but it happens, and that's what annoys me. It's what this whole monologue was about. Okay, so yeah, which is like, I mean, like school in general, it's like it missed its purpose, just like the way I said with language. Like the actual purpose of, so like when we say that language, the purpose of language is to communicate stuff, and say that, okay, well, if you restrict something that actually does it, it's missing its actual goal, which sometimes I would describe that by saying it's retarded, because it is in my because it's like, well, I mean, I would make an etymological argument and say that doesn't work in English that well, but in German that works, because it has the meaning is basically it's hindering something. So I say, okay, well, so now it's hindering it in its whole purpose, right? So that's why I would say retarded, but with the German word, which is behindert. But yeah, so right, so I actually think that's it's the same for school, because it's not really anymore about, you know, educating people, but like it's really educating. Well, maybe it's just about testing, or like educating in what has to be educated, which in my opinion isn't really education anymore. It's not really teaching stuff that, you know, about like how things work or like whatever, but more about this is the way something has to be done or whatever, and you know, those kinds of things. And God, I don't know, that's just so retarded. Like, because you say stuff like you don't have to be intelligent or whatever you just have to study and, like, you know, learn all these things by heart or whatever. That's, to me, that's not really educating people. It's more like, you know, learning for a test isn't really education. And so I don't think, I think their school missed its purpose. Right. So, you know, because, like, say, let's just say we find out that something was wrong. Like, the school will, like, until this, like, the school can't just make a new, like, it's a rigid system, and it doesn't really get updated in that sense. So like it's just the fact that it can't do that quickly enough. It's just, I don't know, it's just dumb. You know, for example, I have experiences of teachers telling me, like, I asked a question about, let's say, maths, and it's not like, it's not needed for our next exam, or like it's like above maybe the niveau, like the level of knowledge in our grade. Well, then the teacher told me, well, it's not important for the exam, and just went on. Like, stuff like that really is like, well, what am I even here for? To, like, learn stuff? Well, no, obviously I'm not, because, you know, teacher didn't help me do that. So I can understand, like, why people say don't see the purpose in going to school, or, you know, studying for it, stuff like that. Because it actually isn't really trying to do that much, and it's not really connecting with life, and like what you need in life, or like what knowledge there is about it, just the things. And like, that's maybe, I think that's actually because it's not really trying to do that anymore. So yeah.
Well,
just like language. Yeah, okay.
And a lot, well, you could talk about where the problem comes that's creating that. Sorry, I'm hearing myself reverb, and it's getting me all like.
How are you?
I think it stopped, but that was weird. It was like reverbing back to me, and I was getting very distracted. But you gotta think about too, like why schools have become this way, and why they are in a way that forces you just to memorize things, because standardized tests are how we prove quote unquote knowledge, and like that's how we standardize the success of a school is through testing, and the testing is standardized in order to get money. Sorry, I got distracted by a message. But also, I don't really want to talk about education too much because I'm already feeling like that I just have old ideas about it that I haven't really thought much about since. And some of these opinions are kind of old, and I don't want to just like say an opinion about something that I might not believe anymore because it's been a few years and I'm more removed.
You could frame it as, well, that's how I experienced it earlier, and then you can say
it. True.
Like, yeah, that's the solution there.
Yeah, I just feel like schools, or at least this is how I've felt, is that schools are trying to, like, if a school does poorly, for example, if like you fail your standardized test or don't have a high enough average for your standardized test for school, for a school, they're going to lose funding. And losing funding means losing jobs for the teachers or losing supplies for the schools or et cetera, like losing money for the school. And therefore, the only schools that actually teach in the way that you're talking about are the ones that cost money, that are privatized, and people have to pay $3,000 a semester to put their kid in school there, because those are the only ones not held to these standards and not relying on the money from the government to work. They're relying on the money of the people putting their kids there. So it does end up being, or at least like from what I witnessed when I was younger and like the things that I've thought about, is that like, not that rich people have an advantage per se, but just the way that the system is, somebody who has money and has the ability to put their kid in a school that they've chosen and that they're funding, they have more control over the kind of education that their child is getting, and therefore they're going to mold that kind of teaching a little bit more than as like a kid that goes to a public school. The parent is not going to have as much investment as to how the school is run. There's like PTO or parent-teacher organizations where the parents come and do stuff at the school, but they're not trying to change the schooling system. They're not trying to affect what their kids are learning. It's all a political thing of like what kind of events are going off at the school and what kind of fundraisers are happening, et cetera, in like a public school setting, or at least when I was in school.
Okay, it didn't. Is okay? Now I'm thinking about whether or not that's an American thing or not, because I don't think that's the way they are funded here. But I don't know. I'll look that up. That's quite interesting, actually. Huh. Yeah. Okay. I actually, I would have to like take like, let's say, okay, well, I would say 2 minutes, but it probably would be 5 minutes. So I'm gonna say 5 minutes. I could like 5 minutes break, a minute break, and I can give an example of like, it's just a funny anecdote. But it's you know, there's MBTI in there, there's the school system in there, and then, you know, stuff like that. So okay.
Why do you need the break? So you can think about it?
Yes, and well, firstly because, well, I mean, how long is the stream? 3 hours.
Long time.
That one. So, secondly, I need to it's about my grades. Like on Friday, I got my the grades of my half year, so it's related to that. So because of that.
Oh, you have to like get it and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'll just look like show the whole thing because like private stuff in there, but like I would get it and stuff like that. So I don't know if this is just like a yeah. Would that be like would that work if I just took a short break? Like,
I'm just getting tired.
Oh, so you wanna end?
I mean, if we're gonna take a break, I would like to end because I need to like I'm getting sweaty and stuff from sitting down for so long.
Yeah.
As
Yeah,
might
I
be
know.
TMI.
What?
TMI, too much information.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, I'm
it's
just getting
basically like it's basically okay. I can summarize the whole thing and then we can stop.
okay.
It's basically like okay, it's about physics. So my teacher is an INTP, which is quite cliche, but so
Wait, which
so
teacher?
My physics teacher.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
So
pretty cliche.
as an INTP, yeah. So he well the way he basically just ignored how the grading system works because in the sense of well that student definitely displayed a performance on this level, this grading level. That's the thing if you want to use MBTI with TI. He well, interesting. Oh, that was a rhyme. With TI, he concluded, okay, those are the grades of the students. Now the problem there probably was that okay, well, the grading system says no. The grading system says, well, no, actually that's the grade and that's the grade. And what the problem there is that well the grades didn't really display the actual grade that they should get according to their performance. So well I'll just grade them how their performance should be graded instead of making something false. And so yeah, so now certain like, I don't know about everyone, but I do think it's not just it's like I know about some people and I can like if he probably didn't just do it with the only students. He just like he just graded the way he thought people should be graded. So which I think is like that's like that's a cool teacher. Like I didn't like yeah, he's a really cool teacher. That yeah.
So he took like skill and performance into consideration when grading rather than just like going off a standard test / homework type grading scale or
yeah, the thing is that this is like it's very hard to be like okay he thought about this and this and this like especially because he's a TI user. But imagine like this the grading system is consistent of your exams, 50% exams and 50% your how do you say like your contributions to the lessons. So and your work ethic, all those kinds of things. So basically, let's say I wrote or well, let's take the example of someone else who got a 4 and a 5. I actually think, which is the like it goes from 1 to 6. So now and this is and it's really important that it's the problem is like I don't know how problematic this could get, but like it's from 1 to 6, and that student got a 2 on their report, which is impossible because 3 and 5, it's like 4.5, and like it's impossible to get a 2 in a sense, right? Even if you got a 1 in 150% and then a 4.5, a 2 is like just above the thing he could get. Which let me calculate. It's
So 1 is the best or 6 is the best?
wait a second. So 1 is the best. And oh wait, my calculator plus 1. No. So yeah, the best he could get was a 3. 3 plus probably. But he got a 2 on the as the final grade. Which is it's impossible, I think. Well, it could be close to possible. I'm not sure, but I'm very, 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 very sure that it was impossible. So yeah, that's like and that's he's an INTP, which is like like you could expect that actually. And yeah, he's a cool teacher because he doesn't really abide that much by like it's not like he's a bad teacher or whatever, right? But what he does is like, okay, he knows that school has this certain intention of educating people, and he realizes, okay, well, maybe he doesn't even think about it that much, but like he just does what the goal is, and he isn't concerned about how he should, how he is, how he ought to do that. He just does the goal. He just wants to achieve that, and because that's the goal, right?
Right.
Which is my opinion too. And I like a system for like telling people how they should do something is like, don't you just have a goal? Can't you just tell the people that you have a goal and try to trust them that they can achieve that goal? Because like that's because if not, you're basically it's an insult. And a society can't work that way, in my opinion. And that's something that makes that's probably the essence of why I don't like the system, of how I wouldn't like a system if it tells you how to do something in this sense.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of seeing the relationship with like how you're supposed to learn a musical instrument. They tell you basically to like play the instrument, like pretend to play the instrument and fake playing the instrument, and so you can get comfortable doing it. And then the how like comes together later on, but you still have to fake or like have the confidence to try to like play the instrument before you can do it. And that would be the same with most learning. You need to like have confidence that you can achieve it and then work on finding what parts of the how you don't personally get instead of starting from the bottom and saying, we need to learn all the basics and get you all this information before you're ever even going to be able to say that you play guitar, which is just so counterintuitive. But there are people that try to teach guitar that way, but
which way?
The wrong way, by saying like you need to learn all the basics first. You need to learn how to read sheet music before you can ever even try to play guitar. Whereas, go ahead.
How I conceptualize this kind of thing, what you just said, is to develop an intuition about something, and I actually think that makes quite a lot of sense. So, for example, in maths, well, like if you have no idea how stuff like this works, if you have no mathematical intuition, you have problems, and obviously you will be unable to do anything that isn't how you learned it, because there's no intuition there you could rely on. So that's my take on that, and I actually think that's those two things are I like them as they're quite good as a last point.
Yeah.
As in finishing. So I hate systems when they tell you how to do something, because they're basically insulting your own competence or whatever, ability to do something on your own. And secondly, you need intuition to do something.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
And I want to like kind of give one more example too, because I used to train. I used to be like a corporate trainer. And I was teaching people how to do sales, which is basically a form of communication, right? Like you have like a kind of quote unquote formula, but the formula doesn't matter as much as like the end result. And like teaching adults, they like tell you different methods to teach adults than you teach children anyway, which I think we should teach children in this method too, but that's just like my opinion. But like basically my whole job was, or the way that I approached it was, get the people in the class interested in the concept that I'm trying to teach them, get them to want to search for the answers on their own, and help them in the way that they come to me asking for help. Like there are certain concepts I need to teach them, like just basic rules of like, what is X, Y, and Z? Like there are basic things that you just have to teach. Like there's no way around it. But my approach, at least what I did, is I tried to let people learn on their own. And all I was trying to do is get them motivated to learn the subject at hand. And then when they came to me asking for certain help, then I would. And there were, of course, those people that were like, tell me the formula, tell me exactly how to do it, because what you're doing is too hard for me. Like, you're just telling me, come up with this on my own, and I can't. And there were those people, and that's fine. Like, I helped them.
Yeah, there probably were.
But it was a minority. It was a very small minority of people that were actually needing the formula. There were people that came up with a formula on their own. Like this one INTJ girl, she was definitely like, I knew she was an INTJ from like the moment she stepped in the class, but like she was very confident once she figured it all out for herself. And once she was the one, like while I was giving an instruction, she would be looking on her computer and like looking up different information and looking up things and building her own system and kind of listening to me, but kind of not. And then there were those other people that were like the avid note takers that like wrote down every single word that I said. And I was like, how is this going to help you to write down every word? You're never going to be able to find these notes again.
No.
Like
the same level of agreement that I had when you said that people, like those people who actually think about something and, you know, think they're the minority because they don't fit in the one or other answer kind of category. So, you know, I really agree with that one, right? And I agree with the exact same way on you there, like 100%. Same level of agreement. I think the same. Yeah, like, yeah, it's like, I mean, I could formulate my own answer, but like that's, I mean, that, you know, we could also just stop this live stream because there's nothing we can say to that more, and you know, it's kind of like.
Yeah, well, then I guess, one, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on to the interwebs and sharing your face and talking with me live in front of people, where people can now watch it on my channel and kind of go over it. And we can even watch these conversations again and maybe learn something that we might have missed while we were in the midst of the conversation. We also had wonderful guests who were chatting away and having their own conversation for a little while. They did not want to give up that good versus evil conversation, and I get it. That's a conversation that's fun to talk about. There's a lot of opinions to be had. And I thank them all for sticking around for so long. Cedric, Snake, and Walter. I don't actually know Snake's real name, but Snake is fine. Are there any final words you would like to say?
Well, like this was cool, like, and like it's really funny that it actually was till 2 a.m. here. But like, I don't know, like this was actually really interesting, you know, like and like engaging. So thanks, I would say, which is kind of like, well, you know, you could say either it's thanks squared or they negate each other to zero, but I don't know. So yeah, and I'll definitely look at this at a later point in time. So, and you know, this would probably be an example of me talking English because, like, I don't know, kind of like as proof that it's not really, you know, but this is an education debate again, but like, you know, about language. So, but yeah, okay. So that's work. So, I don't know. What do you say? Goodbye.
Yeah, so thanks for coming on my channel, and I am trying to like figure out a way where we can have multiple people in the room so we can have like group discussions, because I think that would be so much fun to get people of different
Yes.
personality types and like have us all talk about like random stuff. So hopefully you'll come to one of those. But otherwise, thanks everyone so much for watching, and have a wonderful night.